Tonight, we're exploring every member of the Black family. This story has many layers, but I'll keep the narration soft and calm so you can still drift off. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. At number 12, Grimmauld Place, behind curtains that seem determined to stay closed, hangs the Black family tapestry. Gold thread traces centuries of marriages, births, and inherited names across its dark fabric. But in several places, there are empty, scorched holes. Those are the relatives the family chose to erase. The name Black is a surname, not a description of race. The Blacks are presented as an old, white British wizarding family, and their name became associated with something far darker than its ordinary meaning, an obsessive belief that magical blood had to remain pure. And their crest carried the French words Toujours Pur, meaning always pure. For the Blacks, it was not merely an old motto embroidered beneath a coat of arms. It was a rule that shaped marriages, friendships, inheritance, and sometimes the fate of their own children. They were one of the sacred 28, the old wizarding families claimed to be entirely pure-blooded by the 1930s. They had money, properties, rare magical objects, and connections reaching into many of Britain's most powerful families. But their pride rested on a fiction. Sirius Black, who knew his family better than almost anyone, put it simply: no true pure-blood families existed by the 20th century. The Blacks maintained the appearance of purity by hiding inconvenient relatives, rejecting Muggle-born spouses, and pretending that squibs had never existed. The tapestry makes that cruelty visible. Marius Black was burned from it because he was born a squib, a person born into a magical family without magic of his own. Iola Black vanished from the tree because she married a Muggle named Bob Hitchens. Decades later, Andromeda Black would suffer the same punishment for marrying Ted Tonks, a Muggle-born wizard. The family did not simply disapprove, they turned rejection into a ritual, leaving blackened spaces where a name and a life had once been. For generations, most Blacks entered Slytherin House at Hogwarts. They were raised among old ideas of status, superiority, and secrecy. One ancestor, Phineas Nigellus Black, became Hogwarts headmaster and was remembered as its least popular one. Even after his death, his painted portrait continued to complain from the walls of Hogwarts and from the house at Grimmauld Place, preserving the Black family's haughty voice long after the people themselves were gone. Yet the family tree did not produce obedience alone. It also produced rebellion. Sirius Black, the eldest son of Orion and Walburga Black, became the family's most open defiance. Sorted into Gryffindor rather than Slytherin, he found friendship with James Potter, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew. He left his childhood home, joined the Order of the Phoenix, and became godfather to Harry Potter. His name was burned from the tapestry, but Sirius treated that wound as a kind of freedom. His younger brother Regulus initially seemed to be everything the family wanted. He joined Voldemort's cause while still very young, and was proud to serve the Dark Lord. Then he learned what Voldemort had made: Horcruxes, objects created by murder and used to divide the soul. Regulus chose to betray Voldemort in secret. With the help of Kreacher, the Black family's house elf, he entered a hidden cave, took one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, and gave his life among the Inferi to begin its destruction. Their cousins carried the family legacy in different directions. Bellatrix Black married Rodolphus Lestrange and became Voldemort's most devoted follower, fierce enough to frighten even other Death Eaters. Narcissa Black married Lucius Malfoy and devoted herself above all to her son Draco. At the Battle of Hogwarts, she saved Harry's life by lying to Voldemort, because she needed to know whether Draco was alive. Andromeda chose love over blood. Her marriage to Ted Tonks cost her family, but gave her a daughter, Nymphadora Tonks, and eventually a grandson, Teddy Lupin. The Blacks had tried to cut her away. Instead, she became part of a gentler branch of the wizarding world. Sirius died after Bellatrix struck him during the battle at the Ministry of Magic, falling through the ancient veil in the Death Chamber. Regulus had already died alone years earlier. With Sirius gone, the direct male black line came to an end, not through poverty or conquest, but through the consequences of the family's own choices. The name Black, as a surname rather than a description, often leads to confusion. But within the wizarding world, it anchors a family whose legacy is defined by a different kind of darkness. This is the noble and most ancient House of Black, a British wizarding dynasty that traces its origins back to the Middle Ages, one of the so-called Sacred 28 families believed to be entirely pure-blooded. Their crest bears the French pure, and it is not merely an old motto. It is a rule that governed marriages, friendships, inheritance, and the fate of their own children. Yet the irony at the heart of the family is that their obsession with pure blood destroyed their own line from within. As Sirius Black once pointed out, no true pure-blood families existed by the 20th century. The Blacks maintained the appearance of purity by hiding inconvenient relatives, rejecting Muggle-born spouses, and pretending that squibs had never existed. The family tree tapestry at number 12, Grimmauld Place, makes this cruelty visible. Gold thread traces centuries of marriages and births across its dark fabric, but in several places there are empty, scorched holes. Those are the relatives the family chose to erase, relatives who did not fit their narrow definition of purity. Marius Black was burned from the tree because he was born a squib, a person without magic born into a magical family. Iola Black vanished for marrying a muggle named Bob Hitchens. Decades later, Andromeda Black suffered the same punishment for marrying Ted Tonks, a muggle-born wizard. The family did not simply disapprove. They turned rejection into a ritual, leaving blackened spaces where a name and a life had once been. The tapestry becomes a chronicle of that damage, each scorch mark a reminder of the cost of their ideology. Generations of Blacks entered Slytherin House at Hogwarts, raised among old ideas of status and superiority. One ancestor, Phineas Nigellus Black, became headmaster and was remembered as Hogwarts' least popular. Even after his death, his painted portrait continued to complain from the walls of the school and from the house at Grimmauld Place, preserving the family haughty voice long after the people themselves were gone. Yet the tree also produced rebellion. Sirius Black became the family's most open defiance, sorted into Gryffindor, leaving home, joining the Order of the Phoenix. His name was burned from the tapestry, but he treated that wound as freedom. His younger brother Regulus initially seemed the perfect heir, joining Voldemort's cause while still young, proud to serve the Dark Lord. Then he learned what Voldemort had made, objects created by murder, and he chose to betray that cause in secret, giving his life to begin the destruction of a Horcrux. The family story is set against those faded, burned and accusing branches. The Blacks were wealthy, influential, connected to many of Britain's most powerful families. But their pride rested on a fiction, and that fiction consumed itself. By the time Sirius fell through the ancient veil in the Death Chamber at the Ministry of Magic, the direct male Black line had already ended, not through poverty or conquest, but through the consequences of the family-owned choices. Their obsession with blood left them with scorched gaps and a legacy of loss, a tree full of holes where love and loyalty might have grown. And still, the Black inheritance did not disappear entirely. It passed sideways through the women the family had raised to preserve its values. Bellatrix Black married Rodolphus Lestrange and became one of Voldemort's most devoted followers, turning the family hunger for supremacy into open cruelty. Narcissa Black married Lucius Malfoy, linking two old pure-blood houses and raising their son Draco beneath the same expectations that had shaped generations before him. But Narcissa also revealed the limits of that loyalty. In the final battle, when she learned that Draco was alive, she chose her son over Voldemort and lied to the Dark Lord himself. Even within this family, love could survive, though often only after fear had pushed it to the edge. The line eventually passed to Harry Potter through Sirius's will. That inheritance carried a bitter symbolism. Harry, a half-blood boy despised by so many old pure-blood families, became the owner of the house and the master of Kreacher, the Black family's house elf. Where the Blacks had treated Kreacher as a servant bound to their prejudices, Harry gradually gave him dignity, trust, and a reason to fight for something better. That is the final contradiction of the House of Black. They wanted their name to endure forever, preserved in gold thread and guarded by blood. Instead, the values they defended most fiercely became the force that ended them. Their surviving legacy was not purity, but proof that no family can build greatness by erasing its own humanity. The House of Black defined itself by a single, ruthless standard. A standard captured in just 2 words, stitched into their very identity, carved into the stone of their ancestral home at 12 Grimmauld Place. Toujours Pur, always pure. This phrase, borrowed from the French wizarding aristocracy, was chosen specifically for its elegance, its exclusivity, and its absolute finality. It was never just a motto to be recited at formal dinners or written in letters. It was a binding magical and social contract, a demand for absolute conformity, a test that every generation, every child, every cousin had to pass, or else face the full weight of a disappointed bloodline. This is the core belief that magical blood made certain families inherently superior, not just different in their abilities, but elevated in their very essence. The Blacks believed their lineage was a direct conduit to the very foundation of magic itself. To dilute that blood through marriage to a Muggle or a Muggle-born was not simply a bad decision. It was a sin against nature, against magic, and against the family itself. The Blacks were treated as royalty in certain corners of the wizarding world precisely because they carried this belief so openly. Their name commanded respect, fear, and a certain grudging admiration. But how does a phrase that sounds so elegant, so aspirational, become a justification for such profound cruelty, exile, and control? How does an honor code turn so easily into a weapon of destruction? The answer lies in the family's deepest, most deeply hidden fear: extinction. If the bloodline is the absolute measure of your worth, then anything that threatens it must be cut away without mercy. A squib was not just a disappointment. A squib was living proof that the magic was failing within the family itself. A Muggle-born spouse was not just an insult to tradition. A Muggle-born was an invader, a foreign element diluting the sacred line. Every marriage to a half-blood was a quiet step toward oblivion. To protect the purity of the whole, the family purged itself of the individual parts that represented failure. Marius Black was erased from the official family history for the simple crime of being born without a trace of magic. Iola Black was completely removed from the records, her name forgotten, for the crime of marrying a Muggle named Bob Hitchens. Andromeda Tonks, the middle of the 3 beautiful Black sisters, had her face physically burned off the family tapestry at 12 Grimmauld Place, simply for marrying Ted Tonks, a kind and gentle man born to Muggle parents. Control was absolute. It was exercised through arranged marriages between first cousins, designed to keep the magical core concentrated and the wealth within the family. It was maintained through the constant threat of being forgotten, of becoming a scorched hole in the fabric of the family history, a permanent scar of shame. The tapestry hanging in the drawing room of Grimmauld Place is not a proud record of a noble lineage. It is a map of their cruelty, a hall of fame built on a hall of shame. Blasted branches mark every act of rebellion, every act of love, every single choice the family could not control or understand. It is in this atmosphere of inherited paranoia and absolute control that the seeds of the family's own destruction were sown. Because when you enforce every rule without compassion, when you value an abstract ideal over the actual people who carry it, you create rebels. Sirius Black was the most obvious and brilliant flame of rebellion. He looked at the tapestry, He saw the scorch marks where his aunts and uncles had been erased for their humanity, and he made a choice. He chose humanity over purity. He rejected the entire premise that his blood made him superior to anyone else. But his rejection was rooted in a powerful, devastating truth that he carried with him, a crucial fact that completely undermines the entire foundation of the noble and most ancient House of Black. Sirius understood that the family's entire obsession was built on a carefully maintained fiction. By the 20th century, there was not a single wizarding family left in Britain that could truly claim absolute purity. Families like the Weasleys, the Potters, the Longbottoms, all of them had Muggles and Muggle-borns somewhere in their history. The Blacks were no different. They simply rewrote their own history. They looked backward, selectively choosing which ancestors counted as purely magical and which ones to pretend had never existed at all. They systematically removed Muggles and Squibs from the family tree, rewriting their own lineage to suit their ideology. To maintain the fiction of purity, they had to rewrite reality itself, burning their own relatives out of existence to protect a myth. This is the devastating answer Sirius gives to anyone who clings to the superiority of the old ways. Dark wizards, ministry officials, arrogant schoolmates, his own mother. Pure blood is not a biological truth in the wizarding world. It is a social construct. It is a political hierarchy created by families like the Blacks, specifically to consolidate power and status over others. It is a weapon of social control, designed to punish outsiders and maintain a system of inherited privilege. And that weapon turned inward. It consumed the family from the inside. The weight of that expectation defined their lives. Growing up in a house where your portrait ancestors scream at you for your choices, where the fireplace roars with green flame every time a family member is officially disowned. The pressure to be sorted into Slytherin, to marry the approved cousin, to feel the right kind of contempt for the Muggle world. Some Blacks, like Bellatrix Lestrange, embraced the ideology completely, becoming the most ferocious and dedicated servants of Lord Voldemort, a Dark Lord who promised to restore their imagined purity to its rightful place as the absolute law of the magical world. Others, like Regulus, joined the cause initially, drawn by promises of power and belonging, only to find their conscience awakened in the presence of true evil. They saw what the relentless pursuit of purity truly cost: lives destroyed, families shattered, a soul deliberately broken into pieces. And then there were those who simply wanted to be free. Sirius, who escaped into the arms of the Potter family, building a life around friendship and love instead of blood. Andromeda, who left her entire world behind, choosing a quiet life with a kind man over the grandeur of her name. Meant to be a shield against the chaos of the world. It was designed to be a guarantee of strength, tradition, and unity. Instead, it became the very thing that tore the family apart from the inside. It created a legacy of exile, of broken branches, of children who learned to hate the very name they carried, and parents who learned to hate their children for wanting something more than an ideal. The story of the House of Black is not just a chronicle of aristocratic decline. It is a profound tragedy about what happens when an abstract ideal is valued more than the actual people who carry it. When the name becomes more important than the soul. The structure was set, the ideology was absolute. Now it was entirely up to the people inside to decide if they could survive it, or if they would be the ones who finally brought it down. The motto, "Always Pure," was never just a slogan. It was a contract signed in blood, binding every Black who came after to a specific vision of the world. And the dynasty created by that contract was the ancient House of Black. Before we walk through the halls of this house, let's be clear about the name. Black is a surname. It describes their dark hair and their darker obsession with purity. In the context of the British wizarding world, the family is historically white. The name refers to blood, not skin. This distinction matters because their name perfectly captures their entire worldview, a stark binary of pure or impure, worthy or disowned. The noble and most ancient House of Black traces its claimed roots back to the Middle Ages. They positioned themselves among the first families to guard their blood from Muggles, establishing a lineage they insisted was entirely magical. By any measure, this made them one of Britain's oldest, richest, and most politically connected magical families. They were part of the Sacred 28, but they stood above even that select group. Their word carried weight in the ministry. Their gold-filled vaults deep beneath Gringotts. Their marriage contracts were alliances with other powerful houses, the Malfoys, the Lestranges, the Bulstrodes. Every move was engineered to elevate the dynasty. The physical proof of this power was in their homes. The ancestral townhouse at number 12, Grimmauld Place, was the central fortress of family pride. Behind its enchanted door, the air smelled of dust and mothballs and old, watchful magic. The walls were alive with the portraits of ancestors who passed judgment from behind their gilded frames. Phineas Nigellus Black watched with the cold disdain of a headmaster who despised his work. Walburga Black screamed her fury from behind her curtain, a loud echo of the family's unyielding nature. These were not quiet paintings. They were active instruments of control, chattering in the night, reminding the living of their duties to the dead. The family vaults at Gringotts were deep and ancient. They held centuries of accumulated galleons, yes, but also objects of dangerous power. Silver knives that seemed to thirst for blood. Locked cabinets containing secrets the family had buried. Cursed objects passed down as wedding gifts. Every heirloom in a Black home carried the weight of history, and nearly every history carried a grudge. To inherit from the Blacks was not simply to receive money, it was to accept a duty to the family's obsessions. But wealth gave them influence without ever giving them peace. This is the tragic truth at the heart of the ancient House of Black. Their home was not a place of comfort. It was a cage built of expectations. The constant pressure to be pure created a crucible of ambition, resentment, and eventually madness. The family turned in on itself with a ferocity usually reserved for its enemies. Squibs like Marius Black were literally burned off the family tree. Defectors like Iola Black, who married a Muggle, were erased from the record as if they had never been born. The family tapestry at Grimmauld Place was not simply a record of lineage and birth. It was a scar map of their cruelty, a document of exile woven in thread and magic. This pressure, this obsession with maintaining a standard that no true pure-blood family could actually meet, shaped the character of everyone who bore the Black name. It created deep, fault-line cracks in the foundation of the entire dynasty, and into those cracks, rebellion took root. Some members clung to the darkness of the family name with desperate, violent loyalty. Others clawed their way out, tearing themselves free from the tapestry at great personal cost. A few were simply crushed in the middle, caught between love for their family and horror at what that family had become. The House of Black was their shared inheritance. It was a fortress, a museum, a prison, and the most defining truth about its history is that the family never truly managed to escape its shadow. They either defended it, burned it down, or died trying to do both. Having already established themselves as one of the oldest and most powerful families in the wizarding world, by the 20th century the Blacks held a position that went beyond mere wealth or political influence. They were part of an exclusive group, a list that had become the ultimate measure of worth in their society. This list was known as the Sacred 28. In the 1930s, a writer named Cantankerous Knott compiled a list of families he considered truly pure-blooded. This was not an official government document, but it became a social one. The House of Black, of course, was featured prominently. To be on the list was to be part of an elite, to have your ancestry validated as completely and magically pure. For the Blacks, it was confirmation of everything they already believed about themselves. But the list did more than just congratulate families like the Blacks. It turned ancestry into a form of social currency. Your bloodline became your bank account. If you were on the list, you were wealthy in status. Marrying someone on the list kept the account full. Marrying someone off the list, or worse, marrying someone with Muggle blood, was financial ruin in the social sphere. Suddenly, blood status was not just a belief, it was a sliding scale of worth, quantified by a single piece of published paper. The Blacks, being the proudest of them all, treated this social currency as the most valuable asset they could possess. This is why the Blacks treated marriage as a political transaction rather than a personal one. A marriage was an alliance, a consolidation of power and purity. Look at the Black sisters. Bellatrix married Rodolphus Lestrange, solidifying a bond between two of the most fanatical pure-blood lines. Narcissa married Lucius Malfoy, a union of immense wealth and influence. But Andromeda, she married a Muggle-born wizard named Tonks. This was a choice that defied the entire system, and the Blacks responded exactly as the system dictated. They burnt her off the family tree. To them, she no longer existed. The tapestry that hung in number 12, Grimmauld Place, was a ledger of these transactions. A marriage to a Malfoy was a profit. A marriage to a Tonks was a loss, so great it had to be erased entirely. Every union was a merger, every child an heir to the company of pure-blood supremacy. And yet, for all their obsession with purity, the Blacks knew their own history was a house of cards. Their supposed purity depended entirely on hiding the relatives who did not fit the narrative. Sirius Black was brutally honest about this. He famously stated that no true pure-blood families existed by the 20th century. The idea was a myth. The Blacks simply removed Muggles and Squibs from their family tree to keep up the pretense. Look at Marius Black, burnt off the tapestry simply for being born without magic, a Squib. Look at Iola Black, Phineas Nigellus's sister, who was disowned for marrying a Muggle. The tree was not a record of history, it was a carefully curated piece of propaganda. Every burnt hole in that tapestry was a lie they had to tell themselves to maintain the fiction of Toujours Pur. This obsession with the sacred 28 created a family that was incredibly rich and powerful, but deeply brittle. Their entire worldview was built on a contradiction. They worshipped an ideal of purity that required constant pruning, constant denial. They raised their children to be soldiers in a war for social status, valuing the pure line over individual happiness. This is the atmosphere that created both the fanaticism of Bellatrix and the rebellion of Sirius and Regulus. It was a system so rigid that it could only break the people inside it, or be broken by them. This culture of blood purity, codified by the sacred 28 and perfected by the Blacks, created a vacuum for a new kind of dark magic to fill. It was an ideology that offered a return to this idealized pure past. And when a wizard emerged, who promised to make blood purity the law of the land, rather than just a social currency, the Black family stood at a crossroads. The choices they made in that moment would define the rest of their story, marking some for tragedy, others for redemption. The sacred 28 gave families like the Blacks official social currency, but that currency was counterfeit. The entire premise of an unbroken pure-blood lineage was a carefully maintained illusion, and no one understood this better than Sirius Black, the man who walked away from everything the family stood for. Sirius famously stated that by the 20th century, there were no true pure-blood families left in the wizarding world. This was not just the arrogance of a teenager trying to shock his parents at the dinner table. It was a statement of uncomfortable fact. The family, for all its ancient posturing and gold-threaded boasts, was a monument built on a foundation of carefully curated revisionism. The concept of pure blood itself was a political invention, a magical aristocracy designed to justify prejudice and consolidate power. But how could a family claiming descent from the Middle Ages maintain such a pristine fiction across so many centuries, quietly and with absolute ruthlessness? The family history was not recorded, it was constructed. It was a story they curated and airbrushed with every passing generation. Any ancestor who failed to meet the standard of magical purity was simply removed, not just from the will, and not just from the dinner table, but from the written record entirely, as though they had never drawn breath. Take Marius Black. He was the son of Phineas Nigellus Black, the famously unpopular headmaster of Hogwarts. Marius's only crime was being born a squib. In the wizarding world, being born without magic into a magical family is considered a profound tragedy. In the world of the Blacks, it was an unforgivable stain upon the bloodline, and so Marius was burned off the family tree, a permanent blister of shame upon the tapestry where his name should have stood. We do not know where he went or what became of him. He is simply erased. The same fate befell Iola Black, Phineas's sister. She committed the unforgivable sin of marrying a muggle named Bob Hitchens. In doing so, she stepped willingly outside the sacred circle of pure blood. The family responded by removing her entirely. She and all of her descendants were deleted from the grand narrative, cut loose from the story of the noble and most ancient House of Black. Later, this act of erasure became the solemn duty of the family matriarchs. Walburga Black, the mother of Sirius and Regulus, was the most notorious guardian of the tapestry. She was the keeper of the lie. When her niece Andromeda married Ted Tonks, a muggle-born wizard, Walburga did not simply disown her. She walked directly to the drawing room, raised her wand to the ancient fabric, and literally blasted her niece's image from the family record. The charred hole where Andromeda's face had once smiled was left as a permanent monument to her betrayal, a scorched warning to anyone else who might consider such transgression. It was an archival procedure, an act of historical cleansing. The family history was not something that merely happened. It was something that was constantly being written, edited, and approved. This cycle of removal forced the family inward dramatically. If you cannot marry outside the approved circle, that circle shrinks with every generation. To preserve the name and keep the vast estates from being divided, the Blacks turned to one another. Cousin marriage was not just tolerated among the old families, it was a strategic imperative. If you look closely at the Black family tree, it does not branch outward in the way a healthy lineage should. Instead of spreading into the wider world of magical Britain, the branches twist and curl back upon themselves, forming a tightly woven knot. Arcturus Black married Lysandra Yaxley, another name from the Sacred 28. Their children married back into the family. Cygnus Black married Druella Rosier, his own cousin. Their daughters continued the pattern. Bellatrix married Rodolphus Lestrange, who was also a cousin. Narcissa married Lucius Malfoy, a family heavily interwoven with the Black line through previous generations. The tree is less a branching oak and more an intricate knot. This created a closed world, a world of inherited wealth, inherited prejudice, and inherited expectations. It also created a very limited gene pool. The Gaunts, another old family, were notoriously inbred, leading to instability and violence. The Blacks were a more controlled version of this same phenomenon. They maintained their estates and their political connections, but they fostered an increasingly isolated and paranoid existence. Eccentricity and madness festered quietly beneath the gilded surface of this entire edifice of control. Erasure and selective breed is captured by a single object. It is the physical embodiment of the Black family philosophy, the family tree tapestry, hanging in the drawing room of number 12, Grimmauld Place. This enchanted textile is the family's central monument. It is the Blacks' attempt to make a lie look permanent. Woven in shimmering gold thread are the names of every relative who was deemed acceptable. The tapestry reaches back centuries, claiming an unbroken descent from the Middle Ages. For generations, it hung as the ultimate statement of who the Blacks were. It was a declaration of identity, but the truth is seared into the fabric. The tapestry is a document of absence. Look closely and you see the burns, the permanent dark damage where Andromeda once smiled, the gap where Marius should stand, the scar where Alphard was removed for the crime of leaving money to Sirius. These are not acts committed by enemies. These are wounds inflicted by the family upon itself. Walburga was the high priestess of this shrine. She polished the golden thread. She cursed the burns into place. She carved the history she wanted into permanence. The Blacks needed this tapestry. Without it, they were just a collection of bitter, paranoid wizards living in a dark house. With the tapestry, they had physical proof of their own propaganda. They could stand in that drawing room, see the golden names stretching back into the darkness, and convince themselves that their cruelty was not cruelty at all. It was purity. It was survival. But a lie, no matter how beautifully woven, cannot survive contact with the truth. The very thing they worshipped, their precious blood, carried the seeds of its own destruction. That blood did not just produce Bellatrix Lestrange, the fanatical believer lost to the worship of Voldemort. It produced Sirius Black, the man who walked away from everything and chose love over hatred. It produced Regulus Black, the younger son, who gave his life to tear down the darkness his family helped to build. It produced Andromeda, who chose a new family over an old name and never looked back. The story of the noble and most ancient House of Black is ultimately a story of a family destroyed by an impossible ideal. The lie of pure blood could not hold. It fractured from the force of its own contradictions. The blood of the Blacks was not ultimately spent in the defense of purity. It was spent in the war against it, and that war was fought not on a distant battlefield, but in the quiet, unrelenting choices made in the hearts of the very people the family claimed as its own. The quiet removal of muggles, squibs, and undesirable marriages from the family histories was not an abstraction. It was a physical act. To see how the Blacks truly enforced their blood purity, you have to walk through the front door of number 12, Grimmauld Place. The ancestral home is a monument to this selective history. A house built on the idea that some people deserve to be remembered and others deserve to be erased. The house itself is a character in the story. It sits in London, invisible to the muggles passing by, squeezed between two ordinary row houses, like a secret that refuses to be forgotten. Inside is dark and oppressive, a space that seems to breathe and sigh with the weight of a forgotten aristocracy. The curtains are heavy velvet, soaked in dust and fading magic. The wallpaper crawls with dangerous patterns that shift when you are not looking. Portraits scream insults as you pass, their subjects frozen in eternal disapproval. And somewhere on the upper floors, behind a blanket of dust and neglect, hangs the true heart of the Black family legacy. The tapestry is vast. It covers an entire wall from the ceiling to the floor. The thread is gold, and it traces the family's roots back through centuries. Every birth is recorded in fine script. Every marriage is linked by a golden line. Every death is noted with a small black star. The names stretch from the Middle Ages all the way up to the 1990s. You can find Phineas Nigellus Black there, the least popular headmaster in Hogwarts history. His son Cygnus, who fathered the three sisters of the family, Bellatrix, Narcissa, and Andromeda. The lines that connect the Black family to the Malfoys, the Lestranges, the Weasleys, and even the Potters are all there, woven carefully into the pattern as proof of their influence. At the very top, stitched into the fabric as a permanent instruction, is the family motto, Toujours Pur, always pure. But if you look closely at the tapestry, you will notice it does not tell a complete story. The Blacks did not simply write down what happened, they edited their history, and their editing tool was fire. Scattered across the golden weave are holes, not rips from age or moths. They are scorch marks, burns. The family took a literal torch to the branches of the tree they did not accept. Marius Black is nothing but dark, charred mark in the fabric. His crime was being born a squib. He had no magic, so the tapestry refused to hold his name. Iola Black is another empty space. She married a muggle named Bob Hitchens. She was gone, erased from the family line. Andromeda Black married the muggle-born Ted Tonks. She was burned out of existence alongside her reputation, removed from the family tree, simply for loving the wrong person. Even Sirius Black, who stood in that very house, and hated everything it stood for, exists on the tapestry only as a small burn mark. His mother, Walburga, blasted him off the tree for running away from the family values. Sirius tried to clean the house, to scrub the family off the walls, but the burn marks remained. The tapestry could not be unburned. The holes were permanent. You must understand what it means to walk past this every day. For a child of the Black family, the tapestry was a daily reminder of the consequences of failure. It was a map of the family, and the holes were craters. It told you exactly what the family thought of love that crossed bloodlines, of children born without magic, of anyone who dared to choose a different path. This is the true nature of the tapestry. It is a record, but it is also a weapon. The Blacks understood that the deepest cut is not a physical wound. It is the wound of being forgotten. To be burned from the tapestry was to be told that your life, your love, your choices did not matter. It was the family's ultimate punishment, exile from history itself. And the tapestry displayed this punishment openly in the hallway. A permanent warning to everyone who entered the house. It was the most honest thing the Black family ever created. Looking at that golden weave in the dim light of Grimmauld Place, you understand the family completely. They did not just value tradition, they controlled it, they weaponized it. The names that remain on the tapestry are the ones who passed the test. They kept the blood pure. They married their cousins to preserve the line. They agreed with Toujours Pur. But agreement is not the same as devotion. Some of those surviving names were hiding secrets of their own, and some of the most complex figures in the wizarding world's recent history were born from that agreement, from that decision to stay on the wall. The tapestry at number 12, Grimmauld Place, was the family's official record, a gilded manifesto of who mattered and who had been erased. But the house itself told a different story, a story written in the weight of the air, in the hostility of the shadows, in the sharp, accusing silence that followed every footstep. To walk through the front door was to be swallowed by a darkness that had nothing to do with the lack of windows. This was a darkness soaked in a century of pure blood arrogance. The gas lamps hissed and flickered, casting long, nervous shadows. Curtains were drawn tight against the world, sealing the house in a permanent twilight. The magic here was not the gentle, cheerful charm of other homes. It was old magic, unwelcome magic. It was magic that seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a trespass. The portraits lining the walls were not merely decorative, they were guardians. Each one had an opinion, and each one had been enchanted to express it loudly. To walk the halls of Grimmauld Place was to be judged by a jury of painted ancestors, their eyes tracking you, their mouths curling into sneers. This was the first line of defense. Not physical traps, but a psychological assault of inherited hatred. And presiding over it all was Walburga Black, a portrait hung in the entrance hall, a roaring centerpiece of fury. Pull back the drapes, and a torrent of rage would spill forth. Her voice was a weapon, owned by years of shouting over the dinner table, of asserting the family gospel. She called the Order invaders. She called Harry Potter a blood traitor and a half-blood. She mourned for the glory of her family, a glory she insisted had been stolen. Walburga's portrait was a perfect time capsule of pure blood ideology. It preserved not just her image, but her undying voice. Long after her bones had turned to dust, her screams still echoed through the house. She was the permanent conscience of the Black family, a conscience that had never known a moment of doubt. The house kept her alive to enforce its will. If Walburga was the house's furious soul, Kreacher was its weary, labouring body. The house elf moved through the darkness like a creature born of it. His existence had been shaped entirely by the Black family's rules. He had been taught to bow, to serve, to hate, and he had learned his lessons perfectly. Kreacher was not just a servant, he was a relic of the family's daily rituals. He polished the silver with the same grim dedication his ancestors had shown. He kept the tapestry clean. He threw out anything that the family might have considered an insult. Generations of servitude had transformed him into a living embodiment of the Black family's values. He hated anyone who was not a pure blood, because he had been trained to hate them since before he could speak. When the Order of the Phoenix took over his home, Kreacher saw it as an invasion. He did not betray them just because he was cruel. He betrayed them because he was loyal. Loyal to a dead family. Loyal to a dead ideology. The result was a house that actively resisted its new inhabitants. Objects would move when they were not wanted. Doors would refuse to open. The walls seemed to listen. The old magic that saturated the building was not neutral. It was aligned with the Black family's interests. The house itself was determined to defend the family's old beliefs, to preserve the shrine of Toujours Pur, even if the people it was meant to protect were long dead or in hiding. This was the atmosphere Kreacher and Walburga guarded, a museum of a lost cause, a place where the ghosts of the past did not just haunt the house, they controlled it. Every portrait, every piece of dark silverware, every dusty curtain was a soldier in a war that had already been lost. But the house did not know it was lost. It continued to fight. And so the Black family home became the final Black family member, the one that could not run away, the one that truly believed until the very end. It was a fortress of despair built on a foundation of prejudice. It preserved the family's voice long after the family had fallen silent. The house remembered every child born into its cold rooms, every secret whispered in its dark halls. It remembered the laughter of Sirius, the grim determination of Regulus, the fierce loyalty of Narcissa, and the dangerous ambition of Bellatrix. To understand the echo, you must trace the voices that created it. Every branch of the family tree had a story, a choice, a moment of defiance or submission. The tapestry told the bare facts, but the house remembered the truth. The shadows in the halls of Grimmauld Place were long, but the legacy they cast was longer still. The Black family's long association with forbidden magic was not simply a hobby of distant ancestors. It was the currency of the family name. They collected dangerous things, not just because they could, but because it proved who they were: powerful, untouchable, pure. The family motto, Toujours Pur, was stamped onto their crest, and it was a demand as much as a statement. It demanded that every generation uphold the dark bargain their ancestors had struck with power itself. This love of the forbidden ran parallel with their devotion to authority. The Blacks did not collect dark artifacts simply for scholarly interest. They did it because ownership of such objects represented dominion over the world that ordinary wizards feared. Their vault at Gringotts was filled with magic deemed too dangerous for the market. Their home at number 12, Grimmauld Place, was a museum to their own superiority. Portraits that sneered, silver that burned, and a house elf bound to a lifetime of servitude. This was not wealth for comfort. This was wealth as a weapon. It is no mystery why so many Black children were sorted into Slytherin. The sorting hat does not look at lineage, but it does look at choice. And a Black child, raised in a house that worshipped blood purity, that kept company with dark artifacts, and that spoke of Muggle-borns as a stain on society, had very little choice in the values they absorbed. They were given a single path, and the belief that any other path was treason. But here we must draw a careful distinction. The ambition of Slytherin House, at its best, is a drive to prove oneself, a hunger to achieve greatness. The ambition of the Black family was something narrower, sharp, and infinitely more destructive. It was the ambition of exclusion. They didn't just want to be the best, they wanted to be the only ones. They wanted a world where their kind stood at the top and everyone else existed beneath them. This hunger for superiority was not simply a Slytherin trait, it was a Black family tenet, twisted into an obsession so deep it fractured the family from within. And so the inheritance of a Black child was never simply gold, it was a story of greatness that depended on the suffering of others, a story that demanded you choose your blood over your heart. Every Black child grew up knowing that to fail the family was to be removed from the family, literally burned off the tapestry. Marius Black Esquib was erased. Andromeda Tonks, who married a Muggle-born, was erased. Sirius Black, who rejected the entire creed, was erased. The cage of expectation held tight, but a cage by its nature invites rebellion. The family line was destined to break. Some turned towards the darkness, embracing the cruelty without reservation. Some tried to escape the cage entirely, and some, trapped between expectation and truth, destroyed themselves in the attempt to find a middle ground. The story of the Black family is the story of what happens to the people born into this cage, and what they are willing to break in order to be free. For Bellatrix Black, freedom meant surrendering completely to the values she had been taught. She became the family ideal made flesh, brilliant, aristocratic, ruthless, and utterly devoted to the cause of blood purity. Her marriage to Rodolphus Lestrange strengthened the alliance between two old pure-blood houses, but her true devotion was reserved for Voldemort. In him, she found the authority her family had always promised to serve. He gave purpose to the prejudice she had inherited. Her sister Narcissa chose a quieter path, but not necessarily a kinder one. She married Lucius Malfoy, preserving the same old alliances through a different name. Yet Narcissa's story reveals one of the great contradictions of the Black family. When the safety of her son Draco was at stake, blood ideology became less important than maternal love. She lied to Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest, risking everything to protect her child. It was not a rejection of the world she believed in, but it was proof that even within the coldest family traditions, love could become an act of defiance. And then there was Andromeda. Her choice was perhaps the most quietly revolutionary of all. She did not seek power through darkness, nor did she remain within the safety of the family name. She married Ted Tonks, a Muggle-born wizard, and was cast out for it. The Blacks treated her choice as contamination, but Andromeda built a family based on affection rather than ancestry, and her daughter Nymphadora became part of the resistance against Voldemort. The woman erased from the Tapestry became the mother of someone who fought for the very people the Blacks despised. Sirius made the loudest break. He did not merely leave the family home, he rejected its entire moral foundation. He chose Gryffindor, chose friendship over pedigree, and chose James Potter as a brother when his own family had made love conditional. Yet Sirius carried the wounds of Grimmauld Place with him. His anger, his recklessness, and his desperate need to belong all came from a childhood spent being told that he was wrong for wanting a different life. That is the tragedy at the heart of the Black family. Their obsession with purity was supposed to preserve them. Instead, it hollowed them out. It turned sisters into strangers, parents into jailers, and a proud ancient name into a monument to loss. This connection to Slytherin ran so deep that it shaped the very character of the family's most prominent figures. Among these ancestors, one name stands out not for his heroism or his villainy, but for the sheer consistency of his unpleasantness. Meet Phineas Nigellus Black, one of the family's most infamous ancestors. Born in the mid-19th century, Phineas Nigellus became a professor at Hogwarts before eventually rising to the position of headmaster. His tenure is widely regarded as one of the least successful in the school's history. Where previous headmasters sought to unite the school, Phineas Nigellus actively deepened the divisions. He was a staunch advocate for pure blood supremacy within the castle walls, favouring Slytherin over all other houses. His methods were harsh, his demeanour was cold, and he possessed a deep-seated contempt for the students under his care. In fact, his own descendant, Sirius Black, would later claim that Phineas Nigellus was the only headmaster who actively disliked children. He retired rather than adapted to changing times, leaving behind a legacy of bitterness and the title of the least popular headmaster in school history. But Phineas Nigellus was not finished with the wizarding world. Like many influential figures in Hogwarts history, he left behind living portraits of himself. His paintings carried a unique enchantment. One portrait hung in the headmaster's office at Hogwarts, while another hung in the drawing room at number 12, Grimmauld Place. These two frames were magically linked, allowing him to travel seamlessly between them. This strange afterlife made him an informant, a spy, and an unwilling servant to the very people he despised. During Harry Potter's era, the portrait of Phineas Nigellus became a tool for Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore often sent him to check on Harry, relaying messages and observing the household. Phineas would grumble, complain about the state of the house, and insult the company he was forced to keep. But he was bound to obey the headmaster. This obedience proved crucial in the final years of the war. In Harry's 7th year, when the trio captured the portrait and forced it into Hermione's beaded bag, Phineas continued to offer information, however reluctantly. It was through his grumbling remarks that they learned Severus. Snape possessed a replica of the sword of Gryffindor, a vital piece of the puzzle that ultimately helped Harry retrieve the true sword from the bottom of a frozen forest pool. Even this unpleasant ancestor occasionally carried information that helped Harry Potter survive, not out of loyalty or kindness, but simply because the mechanics of his magical existence demanded he bear witness to events. His portrait remains a permanent fixture in the house at Grimmauld Place, a brooding presence in the drawing room. But he was not the only black ancestor whose painted eyes watched over that dark house. A far more formidable witch presided over the family's decline from her tapestry-covered wall. That witch was Walburga Black, the mother of Sirius and Regulus, and one of the most terrifying presences ever to haunt Grimmauld Place. Unlike Phineas Nigellus, Walburga's portrait did not offer reluctant intelligence or historical commentary. It screamed. Mounted on the wall of the entrance hall, surrounded by heavy curtains that were usually kept closed. The painting would erupt into furious tirades whenever anyone disturbed the house. Her voice filled the corridors with insults aimed at muggle-borns, blood traitors, half-breeds, and, most painfully, her own disgraced son. Walburga represented the black family's obsession with blood purity at its most poisonous. She had married Orion Black, her second cousin, continuing the family tradition of keeping its bloodline as pure as possible. Together they had 2 sons, Sirius and Regulus. In Walburga's eyes, Regulus was the child who upheld the family name, while Sirius became an unforgivable embarrassment. Sirius rejected the values of his parents, formed friendships outside Slytherin, and eventually ran away from home to live with James Potter's family. Walburga's response was brutally symbolic. She burned Sirius from the black family tapestry, removing his face from the lineage as though he had never existed. Yet the empty, scorched space where his name had been remained, a lasting reminder that even the House of Black could not fully erase those who defied it. Her portrait continued to curse Sirius long after his death, revealing just how completely hatred had consumed her identity. When the Order of the Phoenix used Grimmauld Place as its headquarters, Walburga's portrait became one of the house's many dangers. Members of the Order had to move quietly through the entrance hall, careful not to wake her. If she began shouting, someone had to rush forward and pull the curtains shut before her voice alerted the entire neighborhood. In a home filled with cursed objects, dark creatures, and painful memories, Walburga's portrait was perhaps the clearest expression of what the Black family had become: proud, isolated, and trapped forever inside its own anger. Phineas Nigellus Black sat in the headmaster's office at Hogwarts, a portrait muttering about the decline of the wizarding world, blind to the fact that his own family was the root holding it all together. The Black family was never a solitary pillar of pure blood. It was a root system, a hidden network of marriage and ancestry that stretched beneath the entire soil of the British wizarding elite. The Malfoys, for instance. Lucius Malfoy married Narcissa Black. Draco Malfoy, with his father's arrogance and his mother's composure, carries the blood of the House of Black directly in his veins. The Lestranges. Bellatrix Black married Rodolphus Lestrange, merging 2 families equally devoted to the old ways and the Dark Lord. The Rosiers. Druella Rosier married Cygnus Black, making her the mother of Bellatrix, Narcissa, and Andromeda. Evan Rosier, a Death Eater who died fighting in the First War, was a cousin to the Black sisters, the Crouches. Charis Black married Caspar Crouch, linking the family to the Ministry's Barty Crouch and his ill-fated son. And here is where the hypocrisy of the House of Black becomes impossible to ignore. The family papered over the Potters, calling them blood traitors. Yet Doria Black, the daughter of Phineas Nigellus himself, married Charles Potter. Every drop of black blood in that line runs directly to Harry Potter. The Weasleys, whom the family mocked and burnt off the tapestry, are bound by the same thread. Lucretia Black married Ignatius Pruitt. Molly Weasley is a Pruitt by birth. The children of the Burrow carry the blood of the noble and most ancient House of Black, a fact the Tapestry at Grimmauld Place would never acknowledge. They burnt Andromeda off the tree for marrying Ted Tonks, a Muggle-born, but her daughter, Nymphadora Tonks, married Remus Lupin, and their son carries the blood of Blacks, Tonks, and a werewolf. Flowing through a family the Blacks would have condemned entirely. This is the hidden root system. The family's obsession with purity forced them to deny every connection that defined them. They condemned blood traitors while sharing ancestry with the families they despised. They called the Weasleys filthy in their loyalties. While their own great-aunt was a Weasley ancestor, they loathed the Potters, while their own lineage poured into the boy who lived. The web of marriages into the Malfoy, Lestrange, Rosier, Crouch, Potter, and Weasley lines reveals how closely connected the supposedly rival pure-blood families really were. There was no real purity. There was only a shared, tangled ancestry that the Blacks tried to prune with fire and denial. They were the spine of a beast, and every other family was a rib. They could burn their tapestries. They could disown their daughters. They could pretend the blood traitors did not exist. But the blood would not be denied. The roots spread far and wide, drawing water from every corner of the wizarding elite. But a root system is only as healthy as the soil it grows in, and the soil of the House of Black was rich with dark magic and power, but poisoned by hatred and fear. The very connections that should have strengthened the family became the sources of its deepest fractures. For all their intermarriage, they could not control where the seeds of their own blood would fall. The family was a hidden root system beneath much of British wizarding history, and the most famous members of the Black family would emerge not from the centre of the web, but from its edges, pulling against the threads. Sirius Black was the loudest rebellion the family ever produced. Born to Orion and Walburga Black, he was raised beneath the staring eyes of ancestors who expected obedience, cruelty, and an unquestioning devotion to blood. Instead, Sirius chose Gryffindor, chose James Potter as his brother in all but blood, and chose a life defined by defiance. To Walburga, this was worse than any disgrace. Her eldest son had not merely broken a rule, he had rejected the entire foundation on which the House of Black stood. Regulus Black took the opposite path, at least at first. He was the obedient son, the Slytherin heir, the boy who accepted the family's values, because he had never been shown another way to survive them. He became a Death Eater while still young, hoping to earn the approval Sirius had forfeited. But Regulus eventually learned what devotion to Voldemort truly demanded. His final act was not a grand public rebellion. It was a quiet, desperate attempt to destroy a Horcrux, undertaken with Kreacher at his side. The Black family gave the Dark Lord a servant, but it also produced one of the first people willing to die trying to bring him down. And then there was Andromeda, perhaps the clearest proof that the Tapestry could not decide who was worthy of love. Unlike Bellatrix, she did not seek power through terror. Unlike Narcissa, she did not preserve herself through careful allegiance. She married Ted Tonks and accepted exile rather than surrender the life she had chosen. In doing so, she lost her sisters in every way that mattered. Yet by the end of the war, Andromeda had outlived nearly all of them. That was the final curse of the House of Black. They believed blood was destiny, but their own descendants proved the opposite. Sirius became a protector, Regulus became a martyr, Andromeda became a mother and grandmother to a new family built beyond the boundaries of pure blood pride. The Blacks spent generations worshipping the past, only to be remembered most clearly through the members who escaped it. The Black family built their legacy on a pyramid of strategic marriages. They entangled themselves with the Malfoys, the Lestranges, and the Rosiers to concentrate power and magical ability into a single, unbroken line. But this web they wove had a dark underside. The tapestry at Grimmauld Place records every birth, every marriage. But look closely, and you will see something strange. Scorch marks, holes, spaces where faces should be. The family didn't just record their history, they actively edited it. They erased anyone who didn't fit the narrative, and two of the most prominent burns on that tree were inflicted not for crimes or for disloyalty, but for simply failing to be magical enough or for loving the wrong person. Marius Black was one of these erased relatives. He was born into a respected branch of the family. On the surface, he was a typical Black child, but as he grew older, it became clear that Marius possessed no magical ability whatsoever. He was a squib. In most families, this would be a private sadness. In the House of Black, it was a scandal, a catastrophe. The family believed their blood was not just pure, but superior. A squib was a flaw in the diamond, a crack in the foundation of their arrogance. The solution was simple, brutal, and absolute. Marius was removed, not just from the family home, but from the family record. His image was burned from the tapestry, leaving a small, perfectly round scorch mark, as if his life had been a mistake that needed correcting. He was to be forgotten. Why did a non-magical child provoke such a violent reaction? It goes far deeper than simple embarrassment. A Muggle-born can be explained away as a contamination from outside. A Muggle ancestor somewhere down the line finally asserting itself. But a squib is an internal failure. It shows that the vaunted black magic can simply run dry. It suggests that the bloodline is not as strong as the family insists. In their quest for purity, they created an environment so rigid that any deviation was a death sentence. Marius Black was not just a bad wizard. He was a living denial of their most fundamental belief. The family motto, Toujours Pur, was a shield against this exact truth. By erasing Marius, they could pretend that no such weakness had ever existed within the sacred bloodline. He was a stain not on the family name, but on the family myth. While Marius was erased for what he lacked, Iola Black was erased for what she chose. Iola was a sister of Phineas Nigellus Black, the family patriarch who would become Hogwarts headmaster. She was born into the same rigid traditions, but she fell in love with a Muggle. His name was Bob Hitchens. In the wizarding world, a Muggle is someone without a drop of magical blood. To marry one was to commit the highest form of blood treason. It was voluntarily abandoning the purity the family had spent centuries cultivating. Iola did not care for these traditions. She married Bob Hitchens anyway. The family's response was immediate. She was formally disowned. Her name was burned from the tree. She was a Black no longer. She was cast out into a world the Blacks considered beneath them. Her children considered forever tainted by Muggle ancestry. Together, Marius and Iola reveal the central contradiction of the House of Black. The family claimed to value blood, lineage, and family above all else. They were the noble and most ancient House of Black. They spoke of the family name as if it were a sacred trust, and yet they proved time and time again that they valued the idea of the far more than the people within it. A squib son was discarded. A loving daughter was erased. They prized their blood, but only the specific strand of it that adhered perfectly to their doctrine. Any deviation, any hint of the outside world, any expression of humanity that didn't serve the myth was excised without hesitation. The burns on the tapestry are not just records of disownment. They are the scars of a family that loved its own reflection so much that it destroyed its own substance. It was a pattern that would repeat itself for generations. Andromeda Black was disowned and burned off the tapestry for marrying Ted Tonks, a Muggle-born. Her face suffered the same fate as Marius and Iola. Sirius Black practically begged to be removed from the family. leaving the tapestry with another angry burn mark over his own face. The Blacks did not just reject outsiders, they consumed their own. The family tree is a cemetery of names that were literally turned to ash because they failed to live up to a standard that was impossible from the start. This pattern of erasure left the tree hollow. By the time the last generation of Blacks came of age, the family had pruned itself of almost everyone who could have offered it a different path. The ones who remained on the tapestry were the true believers, the loyalists, and the ambitious. And among them were the last children of the House of Black, 3 sisters and 2 brothers, each of whom would ultimately define what it meant to carry the name in a world on the brink of war. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious. Where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. Marius Black was erased from the tapestry for the unforgivable sin of being born a squib. Iola Black was removed for marrying a muggle. These were not just cuts in a piece of fabric. They were life sentences delivered to real people, sentencing them to a lifetime without a family, without a history. What happened to them after the tapestry was sealed? They disappeared from the official memory of the wizarding world. Marius never appears in any documented history of the Black family. His education, his career, his death. If he had children, none of it is recorded in the annals of the Sacred 28. He became a ghost in the margins, a footnote that was actively suppressed. Iola Hitchens built a new life, but she did it without the prestige of her maiden name, without the financial security of the Black Vaults, and without the social protection that the family afforded its obedient members. They existed in a quiet obscurity, a silence that the family considered the most appropriate punishment for their crimes. To be removed from the Black family tapestry meant losing your inheritance. The wills of Arcturus, of Cygnus, of Walburga Black specifically excluded anyone who had been disowned. The wealth that had accumulated over centuries, the properties, the artifacts, the political influence, it was all denied to those who failed to conform. Sirius Black inherited Grimmauld Place only because he was the last surviving male heir, but the house fought him every step of the way. The family loyalty embedded in the very walls refused to recognize him. He was an outsider in his own birthright. Beyond the material loss, there was the loss of belonging. The Black family was a fortress. It was a community, however twisted and cruel. To be exiled from it was to be cast adrift in a world that the family had taught them to fear. Sirius spoke of the suffocating atmosphere of Grimmauld Place, but he also spoke of the emptiness of being alone. The family friends became strangers. The social circles that the Blacks dominated became closed doors. Andromeda Tonks knew that when she married Ted, she was giving up her sisters forever. Bellatrix would later try to kill her. Narcissa would lie about her involvement with Harry to save her own family, but never once reached out to Andromeda. The exile was absolute, and the punishments were never just for the individual. The family's vengeance was a generational curse. Iola's children were never acknowledged. They carried no claim to the Black fortune. Nymphadora Tonks grew up knowing her aunts considered her less than nothing. She was a half-blood, a metamorph magus, an auror. She embodied everything the Black family despised, and her birth mother, Andromeda, was shunned by her sisters because she dared to bring a half-blood child into the world. The spouses who caused the exile were vilified and, in some cases, paid for it with their lives. Ted Tonks was hunted and murdered during the Second Wizarding War. He died simply because he had married a Black woman who fell in love with him instead of the pure bloodline she was bred for. This pattern of exile was the Black family's preferred answer to love, to difference, to independence. There was no room for negotiation. There was no path back to the tapestry. The family motto, Toujours Pur, demanded absolute purity, and absolute purity could not tolerate a single thread that deviated from the design. A child falling in love with a muggle was a threat to the entire genetic project. A child born without magic was a stain on the family's magical legacy. A child who stood up to the family's cruelty, like Sirius, was a challenge to its authority. The response was always the same: burn them out, erase them, pretend they never existed. The burns in the tapestry were not just marks of shame on the exiles. They were trophies for the family. Proof that they were willing to cut out their own heart to maintain their twisted ideal. The quiet cost of this exile was a family hollowed out by its own rules. They sacrificed their children for a principle that was built on a lie. No family was truly pure by the 20th century, as Sirius himself pointed out. The Blacks simply removed the evidence of their own impurity. But the stolen love, the silent grief, the lives lived in the margins, that was the true cost. The tapestry in the drawing room at Grimmauld Place was a monument to this loss. Every burned hole represented a person who had been loved and then discarded, a sibling, a child, a cousin. The family clung to this tapestry as a symbol of their legacy, but it was really a map of their destruction. Every cut they made weakened the fabric of their own bloodline. They were so busy preserving the purity of the tree that they did not realize they were killing the roots. The family tree was losing its branches faster than it could grow them, and in the end, the House of Black had spent so long burning away its impurities that there was almost nothing left but the ash of its own impossible expectations. The Black family tapestry, with its gaping burned holes, represents a history of exile. Those were places of no return. Andromeda, Tonks, Marius Black, excised from memory. To be burned off was to lose inheritance, belonging, and the very protection of your name. But a tapestry does not burn itself. Every severance required a hand. In the mid to late 20th century, that hand belonged to the head of the house. His name was Arcturus Black. Arcturus was the grandfather of Sirius and Regulus. He was the patriarch of the family. In its later years, the living embodiment of Toujours Pur. He was born into a world that took blood status for granted, and he never once questioned that foundation. When you met Arcturus, you met the Black family in its sternest, most unforgiving form. A man who spoke softly, but carried the full weight of 12 centuries of pure blood doctrine. The pressure to preserve that tradition fell directly on his heirs. For Sirius, the eldest grandson, that pressure was a cage. He was expected to carry the name forward, to sit in Slytherin, to uphold the old ways. You can see exactly why he ran. He shattered that cage as hard and as fast as he could. For Regulus, the pressure was a different kind of weight. It was a demand to be the loyal son, the one who would not shame the tapestry. He was the one who listened to his parents, who joined their cause, who tried so desperately to live up to the cruel expectations set by his grandfather. This was a family insulated by decades, by centuries of accumulated wealth. The Black fortune was not just gold in a vault at Gringotts. It was a wall. It blocked out the noise of the changing moral world. The ministry could pass laws promoting Muggle-born rights. Society could shift. But inside Grimmauld Place, 18th century was still breathing. Arcturus managed this wealth, this isolation. He did not need to adapt. The family estate simply refused to recognize a world that did not bow to its ancient creed. He saw Muggle-born integration not as progress, but as a sickness, a contamination, and his fortune allowed him to ignore it entirely, to live in a sealed world where the old order still reigned supreme. This is what the next generation inherited, not just the gold, the dark artifacts, or the house on Grimmauld Place. They inherited a demand for absolute obedience. Sirius and Regulus were born into this world. The temperature was set by their grandfather. Sirius rejected it and was burned off the tapestry for his choice. Regulus tried to mould himself into the perfect heir. Both of them carried the weight of that contract. Sirius was disowned. Regulus was marked as the true inheritor, but the inheritance of that obedience cost Regulus more than his name. It cost him his life. When he discovered that the master he was meant to serve was a monster, even the old order could not have prepared him for. Arcturus Black was the final face of the absolute authority of the pure blood families. He was the patriarch, who who held the house together according to its ancient creed, Toujours Pur, always pure. But purity, when enforced at the cost of love and freedom, becomes a poison. The old order collapsed, not because of an outside force, but because the children inside the walls could no longer breathe the air. The fortune was inherited, the contract remained, and the weight of the old order passed directly to the next generation. Their grandfather could never have understood. For the Black Daughters, that weight took different forms. Bellatrix embraced it with a fanatic's devotion, turning inherited prejudice into violence. Narcissa learned to survive within it, preserving the family name through calculation, marriage and silence. Andromeda chose the path Sirius would later take. She loved beyond the boundaries the family had drawn around her, and for that, she ceased to exist in their official history. The Blacks could forgive cruelty more easily than they could forgive disobedience. That was the true legacy of Arcturus Black's world. It did not merely teach its children whom to hate. It taught them that love itself was conditional. You were protected only while you obeyed. You belonged only while you remained useful to the bloodline. And once you stepped outside those rules, even the people who had raised you could look at your name, lift a wand, and burn it away. From the stern command of Arcturus Black, the old order passed directly to his son. Arcturus had spent years shaping his heir to embody the family creed of Toujours Pur. That heir was Orion Black, and the partner chosen for him, as was tradition within the noble and most ancient house of Black, was not selected at random. She was his first cousin, Walburga Black. This was how the family maintained what they called purity. By marrying cousins, they kept the magic concentrated and the bloodline insulated from the outside world. The marriage of Orion and Walburga was not just a union of two people. It was a consolidation of power, a deliberate continuation of a deeply ingrained ideology. If Arcturus was the patriarch, Walburga was the enforcer. She was loud, proud, and utterly devoted to the cause of blood supremacy. Orion, by contrast, was quieter. He stood in the background of his own household, a man who embraced the family values, but lacked the ferocity of his wife. He died relatively early in the First Wizarding War, leaving Walburga to rule the house alone. For Walburga, the Black residence at 12 Grimmauld Place was not simply a home, it was a fortress of prejudice. The house itself was a testament to their values. The walls were crowded with the severed heads of house elves who had served for centuries, their glassy eyes staring down at visitors. Cursed objects cluttered the drawing rooms, and the family tapestry, a sprawling chronicle of their lineage, dominated the wall of the drawing room, with burns marking those who had disgraced the name. The household became a training ground for prejudice. Walburga preached hatred for Muggle-borns and blood traitors at every meal. She demanded absolute loyalty to the family name. Every conversation, every lesson, every punishment was designed to reinforce the idea that the Blacks were superior and that any deviation was a betrayal. Into this environment, two sons were born, Sirius and Regulus. The older Sirius rejected everything from a very young age. He saw the hypocrisy, the cruelty, and the emptiness behind the grand talk of blood purity. He was sorted into Gryffindor, a direct defiance of his mother's wishes. He ran away, was disowned, and his face was literally burned off the family tapestry by his own mother. Walburga said he was no longer a son of hers. His brother Regulus took a different path. He was the good son. He embraced the teachings, joined the Death Eaters as a teenager, and seemed to fulfill every expectation placed upon him. But even Regulus eventually saw the horror of what he had joined, chose to sacrifice himself to bring down Voldemort, a secret act of defiance that his mother would never understand or forgive. The tragedy of Orion and Walburga is that they created exactly what they wanted and saw it destroy them. Walburga outlived both of her sons. She died alone in the house at Grimmauld Place, surrounded by the dusty trappings of a legacy that was already crumbling around her. But she did not leave quietly. Walburga ensured that her voice would continue to haunt the house long after her body was gone. She placed a powerful enchantment on her portrait, a screaming sentinel that curses anyone who dares to disturb the silence of the black ancestral home. The portrait is a permanent echo of her fury, a preserved scream of rage and grief that can be triggered by the slightest noise. When someone pulls back the curtains of her portrait, Walburga's painted image comes to life, shrieking with the bitterness of a mother who lost everything. She rails against blood traitors, mudbloods, and the decay of the family. Her portrait is not a memory. It is a preserved wound, a piece of her soul that never found peace. The household that was meant to be a training ground for heirs became a cage for her sons, and an echo chamber for her prejudice. The methods she used to enforce their ideology pushed one son away in open rebellion and drove the other toward a quiet, secret ruin. The legacy of Walburga and Orion Black did not continue through obedience. It shattered through the choices of the two boys who had to survive that house. Orion and Walburga Black raised their children in a house that breathed the old ways. The drawing room walls were papered in dark silk. The family tree tapestry dominated the hall, a woven monument to purity and the burns that protected it. Into this world, two sons were born. Sirius arrived first, on the 3rd of November in 1959, a firstborn heir to a family that prized its lineage above all else. He was named for the Dog Star, the brightest point in the constellation Canis Major. For the Blacks, it was a name of power and expectation. 2 years later, Regulus was born, the younger son. He was named for the heart of the lion, the star that marked the centre of the constellation Leo. Where Sirius was a blazing, untamed light, Regulus was quieter, a steady point in the sky. Even as small children, the contrast between them was unmistakable. Sirius Black wanted nothing more than to break free of the gilded cage he was born into. He was fiercely independent. He looked at the rules of Grimmauld Place, the endless lectures on blood purity, the way his mother spoke of muggle-borns and squibs, and he felt a deep, instinctive revulsion. He asked the forbidden questions. He tested the boundaries. He was a child who wanted to find his own way, even if that way was paved with conflict. Regulus watched his brother and learned a very different lesson. He saw the fights, the screaming matches with Walburga, the tension that crackled through every family dinner, and he decided very early that he would not be the source of that tension. He would be the good son, the compliant one, the one who earned the approval his parents so freely gave to the family name, but so rarely offered to their living children. He wanted to be worthy of the tapestry, not burned from it. This is the terrible irony of the House of Black. Two boys grew up in the exact same rooms, listening to the exact same words, and they heard two completely different promises. For Sirius, the promise of Toujours Pur was a threat, a lifetime of hatred and isolation. For Regulus, it was a sanctuary, a clear set of rules to follow, a legacy to inherit. Each brother would eventually betray the family, but the betrayals could not have been more different. Sirius betrayed the Blacks by openly rejecting their core beliefs. He was sorted into Gryffindor. He befriended a Muggle-born. He ran away at 16, taking shelter with the Potters. His mother blasted his name from the tapestry, leaving a hole that looked like a scorched wound in the woven history of their line. His rebellion was loud, public, and complete. Regulus's betrayal was far quieter, and in many ways far more devastating. He did exactly what his parents wanted. He was sorted into Slytherin. He took the Dark Mark. He became a Death Eater, a loyal soldier in Voldemort's army. But the closer he got to Voldemort, the more he saw the truth. He saw the cruelty, the emptiness of the promise of pure blood supremacy. And when he discovered that the Dark Lord was fragmenting his soul, creating Horcruxes, Regulus saw the ultimate betrayal of the magic he had been taught to revere. He chose to die rather than remain complicit. He stole the locket, left a note for Voldemort, and walked into a cave filled with inferi. He did not shout his rebellion from the rooftops. He slipped into the darkness and gave his life to repair a small piece of a very broken world. Two brothers, two completely different paths. One who burned the bridge behind him, and one who quietly collapsed it from within, both standing in defiance of a legacy that was supposed to consume them. The tapestry at 12 Grimmauld Place would never show Regulus's face. He was never burned off the way Sirius was. He simply became a ghost in the family history, a younger son who disappeared and took the Dark Lord's secret with him. The birth of these two brothers was the beginning of the end for the noble and most ancient House of Black. The bloodline that had been preserved for centuries with such care, such cruelty, such absolute devotion to purity, produced two sons who could not bear the weight of it. One rebelled loudly, one rebelled silently. Both of them walked away from everything their parents held sacred, and in doing so, they left the House of Black to collapse in on itself, its final legacy written not in the stars they were named for, but in the choices they made under them. The weight of the Black family name bore down on both brothers, but they responded in opposite ways. For Sirius, the pressure did not mould him into the heir his parents demanded. Instead, it hardened his resolve to escape. The first real opportunity for that escape arrived with the Hogwarts letter on the 1st of September 1971. Sirius Black stepped onto the Hogwarts Express, knowing exactly what was expected of him. Every Black in living memory had been sorted into Slytherin. His parents had made it abundantly clear that any other outcome would be a disgrace, a stain on the family honour. But there in the Great Hall, as the ghosts of Slytherin looked on, he defied them. The sorting was more than a school placement. It was his first public rebellion. When the sorting hat shouted, "Gryffindor," it was a declaration of war against his own blood. The table of red and gold erupted in applause, while the Slytherin table sat in stunned silence. Sirius walked over to join his new house, leaving his family's legacy on the stool behind him. This was his first true stand, and he would never go back. It was in Gryffindor that he met the three people who would change the course of his life. James Potter, a boy with untidy black hair and a confidence that matched his own, was the first to draw him in. There was an instant kinship between them, a shared energy that suggested they were two halves of the same whole. Then there was Remus Lupin, a quiet boy with a haunted look in his eyes, who sat in the corner of the compartment reading, and Peter Pettigrew, small and eager, who seemed drawn to their confidence and wanted desperately to belong. Together, they formed an unlikely quartet. The Potters welcomed Sirius with an open warmth he had never experienced at number 12, Grimmauld Place. He spent his Christmases and summers with James, trading dark, suffocating silence for laughter, chaos, and the unconditional acceptance of a family that did not care about blood purity or family trees. Remus, despite his guarded nature, became a brother in spirit. Peter was the one who followed. They were an odd group, but they fit together perfectly. To Sirius, they were everything his family was not. They were his chosen family, the exact kind of people his parents had taught him to despise. James was pure blood, but he laughed at the idea of their superiority. Remus was shrouded in a secret that would have disgusted Walburga Black, and Peter was an ordinary boy from an ordinary family, and Sirius loved them for it. The Marauders were born from this bond. Those first years at Hogwarts were golden. They were filled with pranks against the Slytherins, flying lessons under the autumn skies, and long nights studying in the common room by the fire. Sirius and James became infamous. They were the ringleaders, the ones who mapped the secret passages and plotted grand schemes. They were loyal to a fault, fiercely protective of their friends, and recklessly brave. The castle became his true home. The gleaming halls of Hogwarts replaced the dark corridors of his ancestral home. The Marauders' map was born from their desire to know every secret the castle held. Sirius was no longer the unwanted heir. He was the leader of the Marauders. But even within this golden era, shadows lingered. The laughter of the Gryffindor common room could not completely mask the tension in the world outside. Darker times were gathering, and the choices made in these sunlit corridors would soon have consequences far beyond the castle walls. While Sirius found his freedom in Gryffindor, his brother Regulus remained at home, absorbing the very lessons Sirius had rejected. The weight their parents placed on the bloodline did not disappear with Sirius's rebellion. It simply shifted entirely onto a younger, more vulnerable pair of shoulders. Regulus had always lived in the shadow of his older brother, but after Sirius left, that shadow became impossible to escape. Where Sirius saw the black family traditions as chains, Regulus was taught to see them as a duty. He was praised for his obedience, his quiet manners, and his willingness to carry the name Sirius had rejected. Before long, he became the perfect son Walburga and Orion had wanted all along. Hogwarts offered Sirius Black a world that made sense. A world of easy friendship, of laughter, of belonging. He spent his days with James Potter, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew. And for the first time, he felt like the person he was meant to be. But every year, the train always had to take him back. The platform at King's Cross was not just a return to London. It was a return to the suffocating silence of Grimmauld Place, a house that breathed judgment from its very walls. The House of Black was a museum of forgotten glory. Dark wood, drawn curtains, the ticking of clocks that never told the right time. Sirius walked through the halls and felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him. The family tree tapestry covered an entire wall, a golden thread record of every Black who had ever lived. And every year, the golden thread was cut. A branch burned away for someone who had disappointed the family. Sirius grew up knowing that his own face would one day be erased. His mother, Walburga, greeted him not with a hug, but with a cold assessment of how much damage the school year had done to the family's reputation. Her screams were a constant soundtrack to his summers. She would shriek about the disgrace he brought upon the noble and most ancient house. She would curse James Potter's parents, the blood traitor Potters who had stolen her son away. Orion, his father, seldom spoke. He simply sat in his study, a silent monument to the coldness that defined the Black family. The conflict was never about what Sirius did, it was about what he was. He had stopped believing in the Black family worldview. The moment he saw the way they treated anyone who was not pure, the word mudblood did not just roll off their tongues. It was a weapon, carefully honed over centuries, and Sirius refused to carry it. Sirius would later tell his godson Harry that no true pure-blood families existed by the 20th century. The Blacks simply burned anyone who proved otherwise off the tree. But Sirius had read the books, seen the family trees, and he knew the truth. The Black family was built on a lie, and he refused to be part of it any longer. Walburga's rages became legendary inside the house. They argued for hours, a voice carrying through the dark hallways. She demanded obedience. Sirius offered defiance. She demanded pride in the bloodline. Sirius openly mocked it. He would laugh at the gold-embossed family tree, already knowing he would rather be a burn mark on that tapestry than a smiling face woven into it. But the laughter was not always real. That reckless humour, the bravado he carried like a shield, was a barrier against the cold. He could not fight his mother with a wand inside the house, not unless he wanted to seal his fate completely. So he fought with words, with jokes, the dismissive grin that infuriated her more than any hex could. His loyalty too was a weapon. He threw himself into his friendships at Hogwarts with a ferocity that bordered on obsession. James, Remus, Peter. They were not just friends, they were his chosen family, and he would do anything for them. The anger, though, was the hardest to hide. It followed him through the halls of Grimmauld Place, a constant low heat beneath his skin. It was the anger of a child who knew his parents would never love him for who he was, an anger that his younger brother, Regulus, seemed to be swallowing the poison whole. Every holiday was a battle. Sirius came home and found his mother waiting with a list of his failures, his friends, his house, his lack of ambition. He learned quickly that silence was an act of war. He stopped apologizing. He stopped begging for approval. He simply met her fury with cold indifference, which only made her angrier. Bellatrix Lestrange would sometimes be present, and she would goad him, testing his loyalty. Sirius never passed her tests. He insulted her husband. He laughed at her devotion to the Dark Lord. He turned every family dinner into a battle zone. But the boy who walked through the doors of Hogwarts in September was not the same boy who had spent the summer at Grimmauld Place. At school, Sirius was a whirlwind of pranks and laughter. He pushed the boundaries of the rules, not because he wanted to break them, but because the chaos was a release. The recklessness was a shield, the loyalty was an anchor, and the anger found its outlet in the ways he defended his friends. The breaking point came quietly. Sirius returned home for the Christmas holidays of his 6th year and found that his mother had burned his name off the family tapestry. He was already gone in her eyes. He had been replaced by Regulus, the perfect son. Sirius looked at the burnt hole where his face used to be and knew there was no future for him in that house. He packed a single bag. He waited until the house was quiet. Then he walked out of the front door of 12 Grimmauld Place, stepped out into the cold London air, and never lived under that roof again. He went straight to the Potters. Fleamont and Euphemia Potter were everything the Blacks were not. They were warm, they were generous, and when Sirius arrived on their doorstep, exhausted and hollow, they did not ask questions about what he had left behind. They gave him his own room, a place at the table, and a love that was entirely unconditional. Sirius had found the first adults in his life who showed him that being a parent was about love, not legacy. He became a second son to them, and for the first time, he understood what it meant to be home. The Potters gave him a new beginning, but the peace of those golden years at Hogwarts could not last forever. The Dark Lord was rising in power, and the wizarding world was splitting into two sides. Sirius was firmly on the side of light, of love, of the family he had chosen for himself. The choices he made in the years that followed would define the rest of his life. The loyalty that had flourished in the Potter household would lead him into the Order of the Phoenix. The recklessness that had protected him as a child would become a weapon for the Resistance, and the friendships that had saved him at Hogwarts would soon be tested in ways no one could have predicted. The story of Sirius Black was only just beginning. There comes a breaking point in every rebellion when words are no longer enough. For Sirius Black, that moment arrived in the summer of 1976, just after his 5th year at Hogwarts. He had spent the school year surrounded by friends, by laughter, by a sense of belonging he had never known at home. And then the summer came, and he had to return to Grimmauld Place. The contrast was jarring. The house was a tomb of pure blood ideology, and Walburga was its high priestess. The conflict had escalated beyond simple arguments into a daily war of attrition. Every meal was a battle. Every glance from his mother was a judgment. The walls of Grimmauld Place were lined with the portraits of their ancestors, and they all watched him with the same cold disdain. They all knew what he was becoming: a blood traitor, a disgrace, a Gryffindor. Walburga Black was a woman who understood two things: blood purity and the power of spectacle. She was not content to simply banish her son. She needed to make an example of him. She needed to make his disobedience a permanent scar on the family history, a warning to any future Black who might consider stepping out of line. So she chose the family tapestry as the stage for her final act against Sirius. The tapestry in the drawing room of 12 Grimmauld Place was never meant to be a simple decoration. It was a statement, a threat, a record of the family's obsession with purity that stretched back centuries. The names of the ancestors were embroidered in golden thread, branching out like a great tree against the dark fabric. But it was not the gold that drew the eye, it was the burns, the blackened, scorched holes where names had been violently removed from history. There was Andromeda, removed for marrying the Muggle-born Ted Tonks. There was Iola, removed for marrying the Muggle Bob Hitchens. There was Marius, removed simply for being born a squib, a non-magical person in a family that prized magic above all else. Each burn was a scar on the family's history, a monument to their cruelty. And on that summer evening in 1976, Walburga Black added the deepest scar of all. Sirius stood before her, defiant in the face of her rage. The house was silent except for the crackling of the fire and the faint whispers of the portrait ancestors watching from the walls. Walburga did not shout. She did not scream. She spoke the incantation with a cold, deliberate precision that was somehow more terrifying than any outburst. She pointed her wand at the thread of his name, and she burned him out of their history. The golden thread blackened. The fabric smoked. The smell of scorched wool filled the room. And in that single act, Walburga chose ideology over her eldest son. She chose the purity of the black name over the flesh and blood of her own child. She chose a concept over a person. It was the defining act of her life, and it was the moment Sirius Black truly became free. If Sirius had expected to feel grief in that moment, he found none. He found relief. The trapdoor had been opened. The crushing weight of the Black family name was lifted from his shoulders. The expectations, the judgment, the suffocating pressure to be something he was not, all of it vanished in a puff of smoke. He was no longer a Black. He was merely Sirius. And waiting for him on the other side of that burn was the family he had chosen for himself. The Potter's home was the opposite of Grimmauld Place in every imaginable way. Where the Blacks lived in shadows and dust, the Potters lived in light and warmth. The house in Godric's Hollow was filled with love. There was laughter echoing through the halls. There was good food on the table. There were no screaming portraits, no dark artifacts, no suffocating weight of expectation. Fleamont and Euphemia Potter were older parents who had given up hope of having a child of their own. And then James had arrived. They had enough love for 2 sons, and they gave it freely. Where Walburga saw a failure, the Potters saw a survivor. Where the Black family saw a blood traitor, the Potters saw a brother for James. The Potters did not burn anyone from their family tree. They simply added another branch. But the scar from the burning did not vanish, simply because Sirius had found a better place. It was still there. It was in the way he flinched when someone mentioned the Black family. It was in the way he avoided certain topics of conversation. It was in the deep, quiet anger that lived beneath his charm. He had been freed from the name, but he could never free himself from its consequences. The name Black was a shadow, and shadows do not disappear just because you step into the light. He could walk away from Grimmauld Place, but the world would not let him forget his surname. Every time a ministry official looked at him, they saw a Black. Every time he walked into a pure blood gathering, he felt the weight of his family's legacy hanging around his neck. He had escaped the ideology, but he was still marked by it. His surname was a shadow that stretched across his entire life. It would follow him into the Order of the Phoenix, where he would fight alongside the Potters against the very ideals his family represented. It would follow him into Azkaban, where the world would look at the name Sirius Black and see only the madness and treachery of his family. It would follow him to his final moments in the Department of Mysteries, even though he had refused to fight for their side. Let us return to the tapestry one more time. The blackened hole where Sirius's name once stood is not just a scar on a piece of fabric. It is the moment the Black family chose to destroy itself. In rejecting Sirius, Walburga rejected the future. She clung to Regulus, the compliant son. But compliance in the face of evil is its own form of tragedy. While Sirius was celebrating his newfound freedom with the Potters, his brother was sinking deeper into the ideology that would lead him to his death in Voldemort's cave. The tapestry held Regulus tight, but it could not save him. The tapestry tells a deeper truth about the Blacks. They were experts at cutting away what they saw as weakness, but in doing so, they cut away their own strength. Sirius, Andromeda, even Regulus in his quiet rebellion. These were the Blacks who showed the most courage and depth. But the family valued purity over courage. They valued loyalty to blood over loyalty to what is right. So Sirius Black walked out of number 12, Grimmauld Place, into a July sun, and he never looked back. The house fell into a heavy silence. The portraits muttered darkly to one another. Walburga wept over her tapestry, mourning the son who was lost to her, while a few streets away, In a warm house filled with love and light, the Potters celebrated the arrival of their new, permanent house guest. The summer of 1976 marked a fracture in the Black family that would never heal. But from that fracture, something new was allowed to grow. The walls of Grimmauld Place grew darker, the tapestry gathered dust, and the burn mark where Sirius Black's name had been glowed like a dead star. A reminder that some choices cannot be unmade. The war was rising. The shadows were lengthening over the wizarding world, and the family he had escaped and the family he had joined were about to be tested in ways no one could have imagined. Sirius Black was free from the chains of his family, but the world was not yet free from war. The burn on the tapestry was permanent, but so was the love that had taken its place. When Sirius Black's name was blasted from the family tapestry, the echo of that curse seemed to silence Grimmauld Place entirely. The scorched hole where his face had been was a wound that refused to heal. A constant reminder of what Walburga considered the ultimate betrayal, and in the quiet aftermath of that explosion, the weight of the noble and most ancient House of Black settled fully onto the shoulders of its remaining son, Regulus Arcturus Black. Regulus had always been the quieter child, the one who watched from the edges while Sirius burned with defiance, where Sirius challenged their mother's decrees and mocked their father's silence. Regulus absorbed the lessons of the house. He learned that survival in the Black family meant bending, not breaking. He learned that approval was a currency, and he was determined to be rich in it. When Sirius fled into the night, an orphan by choice, Regulus did not look back at the empty space with bitterness. He looked forward to the opportunity it created. He would be the redemption of the family. He would be what Sirius refused to become. When Regulus left for Hogwarts, the Sorting Hat barely hesitated before sending him to Slytherin. The Hat saw ambition, sure, but it also saw a deep desire for belonging, and Slytherin welcomed him. He was modest, handsome, and naturally gifted in his studies. He made friends easily among the pure-blood elite, the children of families who whispered the Black name with a mix of envy and respect. He became a seeker for the Slytherin Quidditch team, catching the golden snitch with the same quiet confidence he carried through every corridor. The professors admired him. Horace Slughorn collected him. He was the perfect student, the perfect pure blood, the perfect son. His parents, when they attended matches or read his letters, felt a pride they had never shown his brother. At home, Regulus grew closer to Kreacher, the ancient house elf, where Sirius had mocked Kreacher's devotion and his obsession with the relics of pure blood history. Regulus treated the elf with a distant but genuine politeness. He understood Kreacher's longing for the old ways, for a time when the name Black meant something terrifying and grand. The family tapestry fascinated Regulus, not as a relic of oppression, but as a record of glory. He studied the names of his ancestors, the ministers of magic, the heads of the Wizengamot, the dark witches and wizards who had shaped the world from the shadows. He wanted to earn his place on that wall. He wanted his name to be spoken with reverence. And so, when whispers of Lord Voldemort began to circulate through the drawing rooms of pure blood society, Regulus listened with an open heart. To the Slytherins of his generation, the Dark Lord was not a monster hiding in the shadows. He was a revolutionary. He promised a return to the old order, a world where the sacred 28 families would rule as they were meant to. He promised power to those who had lost it, validation to those who had been mocked for their beliefs. Regulus saw in Voldemort the ultimate expression of everything his family had taught him to value: purity, ambition, order. But Regulus's loyalty, when you look closely at it, was never a simple thing. It was a compound mixed from several distinct ingredients. There was genuine belief, a conviction that the wizarding world had grown weak and needed a strong hand to guide it. There was a deep well of fear, fear of his mother's disappointment, fear of ending up like his brother, burned from the record as if he had never existed. And at the very core of it, there was a profound loneliness. Sirius had been his companion, his shield against the world. Without his brother, Regulus stood entirely alone against the immense pressure of his bloodline. Voldemort's circle offered a new family, a purpose that filled the hollow space left by Sirius's absence. He was no longer the replacement son, he was a chosen knight. When the Dark Lord finally marked him, Regulus accepted the honour with the same quiet dignity he applied to everything. The skull and serpent branded into his arm was a gift to his mother, a declaration to the world that the Black family had not lost its way. He carried out his tasks without the theatrical cruelty of Bellatrix Lestrange or the cold cunning of Lucius Malfoy. He was efficient, dutiful and trusted. He rose through the ranks of the Death Eaters, not through terror, but through obedience. And then his master asked him for a house elf. The mission was simple. Lord Voldemort needed an elf for a task of great importance. Regulus offered Kreacher. He did not see the cruelty in the request, not yet. He saw an opportunity to serve. He handed Kreacher over, and the elf was taken to a cave by the sea. What Kreacher told him when he returned changed everything. The cave, the boat, the basin of emerald potion, the locket, the inferi rising from the cold water. Regulus listened as Kreacher described the horror, and in that moment, the mask of the perfect son cracked wide open. He understood, perhaps for the first time, what he had sworn himself to. The Dark Lord was not a revolutionary. He was a tyrant. He had built his immortality on cruelty and suffering. He had looked Regulus in the eye and sent him to die, hiding behind his potions and his infernal army. The promise of power was a lie. The validation was a leash. Regulus did not rage. He did not run. He planned. He wrote a letter, leaving it where it would be found. He returned to the cave with Kreacher, carrying a fake locket and a mission of his own. He forced the elf to abandon him. He drank the poison. He swapped the locket, and as the inferi dragged him beneath the surface, Regulus Black died not as a Death Eater, but as a rebel, a boy who finally saw the truth and chose to correct the greatest mistake of his life in absolute darkness. The path of the Black family, however, was never written solely by its sons. The daughters of this bloodline were watching, learning, and weaving their own intricate stories. In the shadows of the same war, the sisters of Regulus's generation were already carving their own legends, some forged in fire and fanaticism, others in quiet rebellion and love. Regulus Black was the perfect son, a Slytherin, a pure-blood aristocrat, and a loyal Death Eater. He was admired by the Dark Lord for his devotion and for the eagerness with which he served. It was this very devotion that made him useful for a task no other follower could be trusted with. One evening, Lord Voldemort approached Regulus with a request. He needed to borrow his house elf, Kreacher. Voldemort was undertaking a ritual of the utmost secrecy, a task that required a servant who could be sacrificed if the magic went wrong. Regulus, eager to prove his unwavering loyalty to the cause, agreed. He gave Kreacher to the Dark Lord without hesitation, believing he was helping the great wizard secure his power. The Dark Lord took Kreacher to a hidden coastline, far from the world. They crossed a vast silent lake inside a cave deep within the cliffs. On a tiny island at the centre, Voldemort forced Kreacher to drink a terrible potion from a stone basin. The potion caused unbearable agony, terrible visions, and a thirst that could never be quenched. Kreacher begged for water, but Voldemort gave him none. He simply watched, waiting for the basin to empty, waiting to place a golden locket inside it, and fill it with the potion once more. When the locket was hidden, Voldemort left Kreacher on the island, surrounded by the dead hands of inferi rising from the dark water, to die of thirst and despair. Voldemort did not care if the elf lived or died. To him, Kreacher was nothing more than an expendable test subject, a tool for his immortality. But house elf magic is not constrained by the same limits as a wizard's. Kreacher could not stay and die in that cave while his true master still lived. The bond he shared with Regulus pulled him through the darkness, overriding the Dark Lord's command to stay. With a crack, he apparated back to the kitchen of Grimmauld Place, traumatized and broken, but alive. Regulus was horrified by what Kreacher described, the potion. the Inferi, the Locket. Kreacher's survival gave Regulus the one piece of knowledge no Death Eater was ever meant to possess. Regulus knew exactly what his master had hidden. He knew what a Horcrux was. He knew the cost, and he knew the truth. He had devoted himself to a monster. Regulus Black looked at his broken house elf and made a decision he could never take back. He would not serve a master who saw even the most faithful as nothing but tools. He would steal the locket. He would try to destroy it, and he would accept whatever death came for him in that cave, to undo the evil he had once helped to build. The secret Voldemort tried to bury in the darkness of that lake became the very weapon that turned the perfect son against his master. Regulus, for the first time in his life, chose to act not for the glory of his family or the purity of wizardkind, but to make things right, and he would need Kreacher's help to do it. Together, they returned to the cave. Regulus brought a fake locket, one that looked convincing enough to fool anyone who found it. He ordered Kreacher to follow every instruction carefully. The elf was to take the real locket when the moment came, replace it with the false one, and leave the cave immediately. But first, someone had to drink the potion. Regulus would not make Kreacher suffer through that horror again. He stepped onto the island, knelt beside the stone basin, and began to drink. Each mouthful brought pain beyond anything Kreacher could bear to watch. Regulus cried out for water, just as Kreacher had, yet he forced himself to continue until the basin was empty. Then Kreacher placed the false locket inside. The real Horcrux was safe in the elf's hands, but Regulus knew what would happen next. The potion had left him desperate for water. He staggered toward the lake and drank from it, and the Inferi rose around him. Cold hands dragged him beneath the surface. Kreacher wanted to save his master, but Regulus gave him one final command. He told Kreacher to leave. He told him never to return. And above all, he commanded him to destroy the locket. Kreacher escaped with the Horcrux and returned to Grimmauld Place alone. For years, he tried everything he could imagine to destroy it. He smashed it, burned it, cut it, and attacked it with every spell and household method available to him. Nothing worked. The locket remained untouched, protected by the fragment of Voldemort's soul hidden inside. Regulus had died believing that Kreacher might succeed. He never knew that the Horcrux would survive for many more years, waiting to be discovered by others. Inside the false locket, Regulus left a message for Voldemort. It was signed with 3 initials, R.A.B. The note declared that the Dark Lord's secret had been discovered, and that someone intended to destroy the Horcrux. It was a final act of defiance from a young wizard who had once worshipped Voldemort. Regulus Black was only a teenager when he died. His rebellion was hidden from almost everyone, even from his own family. Sirius never learned the full truth while he was alive. To the world, Regulus remained the loyal younger brother who had joined the Death Eaters and vanished soon afterward. But the truth was far more complicated. Regulus had seen the darkness beneath Voldemort's promises. He had understood that loyalty meant nothing to a master who treated living beings as disposable, and he had chosen to fight back, knowing he would almost certainly die. His sacrifice did not destroy the Horcrux, but it began the chain of events that eventually led Harry Potter to it. The perfect son of the Black family became one of the first people to strike directly at Voldemort's immortality. Kreacher returned to Grimmauld Place a different creature. The proud house elf, who had served the Black family for centuries, had been hollowed out by the task Voldemort had forced upon him. He did not speak of the cave. He could not, but he carried it with him, a weight that changed him entirely. Regulus Black noticed the change. He was the perfect son, the observant heir, and he saw the terror in the elf's eyes. He demanded the truth, and Kreacher could not refuse a direct order from his master. The story poured out. The dark lake, the silent boat, the basin of potion, the locket, and the dead that swam in the water. Regulus listened, and as he listened, a deep, cold horror settled over him. Voldemort had created a Horcrux. This was not a simple hiding place. This was the deliberate splitting of a soul, an act of supreme evil that required murder to complete. The wizard Regulus had pledged his loyalty to was not just a revolutionary, he was a monster, a man who had corrupted his own soul in the pursuit of power. Voldemort was not pure, he was broken, a fractured soul, and Regulus could not serve a broken master. He did not seek help, he did not warn the Order. Regulus Black decided, in that moment, that this was his burden. He would return to the cave, he would take the Horcrux, and he would accept the cost. Because no one drank that potion and walked away, it was an act of private absolute defiance. He called Kreacher to him. He wrote a note, a defiant signature against the Dark Lord. He placed it inside a forged replica of the locket, and then together they apparated to the cliff. The rock opened. The spectral boat carried them across the dark water. Regulus spoke the command, and the basin was revealed. He raised the basin to his lips and drank. He drank every drop. He suffered the memories, the terror, the intense, agonizing thirst. He suffered it all, while Kreacher watched helpless, weeping in the shadows. When the basin was empty, Regulus took the real locket into his hand. He replaced it with the fake, but the magic had drained him completely. He fell to his knees. The Inferi began to stir in the dark water, the dead reaching for the living. Regulus looked at Kreacher and gave his final order. Take the locket. Leave this place. Go home. Do not tell my mother. Do not tell the Dark Lord. Guard this locket. Destroy it if you can. Never speak of what happened here. The command was absolute. The house elf bond was unbreakable. Kreacher tried to fight the command. He tried to stay, but the magic forced him away. He apparated, just as the cold hands of the dead dragged Regulus Black beneath the surface of the poisoned lake. Regulus Black did not scream. He did not fight. He sank into the darkness, becoming one of the Inferi himself, a guardian of the empty basin, a silent sentinel over a secret he himself had stolen. He was Voldemort's hidden opponent, a rebellion written in water and silence. No one knew. No one praised his name. The locket sat in the drawing room of Grimmauld Place for years. Kreacher guarded it, punished himself, and waited. The family tapestry hung in the hall, its holes burned into the fabric. Regulus's name was still there, gleaming in gold, a hero to the Black family, a traitor to the Dark Lord. But the truth waited, the house waited, and the war that would one day expose it all was still just a gathering storm. Years later, the house would begin to empty. Sirius Black was gone. The Order of the Phoenix used Grimmauld Place as a headquarters, and its ancient rooms were searched for anything dangerous, cursed, or useful. Among the dark objects piled in the drawing room was a heavy locket that no one could open. It was passed over, dismissed as another piece of Black family clutter, and then Mundungus Fletcher stole it. He did not know what it was. He saw only something valuable, something he could sell. The Horcrux passed from the House of Black into the hands of Dolores Umbridge, who wore it proudly around her neck, while using the Ministry to persecute the innocent. Kreacher remained behind, bound to the house and bound to Regulus's final command. He had failed to protect the locket, and for years he carried that failure like a wound. Then Harry Potter returned to Grimmauld Place. He found Regulus's note in the cave, signed with the initials R.A.B. He learned that someone had reached the locket before Dumbledore and before him. At last, Kreacher told the truth. The secret Regulus had buried in silence came into the light. And when Harry treated Kreacher with kindness, the old house elf changed. He was no longer serving only the memory of the Black family. He became part of the fight. Regulus had begun alone. The locket was recovered. Its curse was broken, and the sacrifice of a forgotten Slytherin became one more crack in Voldemort's armor. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. The night Regulus Black died, the world did not stop. Voldemort believed his Horcrux was safe. Kreacher apparated back to the kitchen of Grimmauld Place, clutching a locket that burned with dark magic. Regulus's final order echoed in his mind. Destroy it. Do not tell. Never tell anyone. Kreacher tried. He tried stabbing it with a knife. He tried crushing it. He tried setting it on fire. He tried vanishing it. Nothing worked. The magic of a Horcrux was too strong for a house elf. He failed the last command of the best master a house elf could have. Kreacher did the only thing he could. He kept it. He kept the locket as a shrine to his master. He wore it around his neck for years, cradling it, weeping over it, locked away in the house at number 12 Grimmauld Place. When the house fell silent, when Walburga's portrait grew still, Kreacher would creep up to the attic. He would hold the locket and whisper to it. He would speak to Regulus. He told him about the wizarding world. He told him about the Dark Lords for the first time, about Harry Potter surviving. Kreacher kept his master alive in the only way he knew how, through memory and devotion. For more than a decade, while Voldemort rose and fell and rose again, Kreacher was the silent guardian of Regulus's last wish. He was the keeper of the most dangerous secret in the wizarding world. Years later, the locket resurfaced in the hands of fate. Mundungus Fletcher, a petty thief who plundered Grimmauld Place after Sirius's death, took the locket. He sold it for a handful of galleons. It passed through the shadows of the wizarding black market before landing in the possession of Dolores Umbridge, who wore it proudly as a reward for loyalty to the Ministry. And this is where the mystery began for three young wizards. Harry, Ron and Hermione, searching for Voldemort's Horcruxes, had found an empty skin in a cave on a rocky outcrop. In it, a note written in a script they did not recognize. A challenge signed with three initials that meant nothing to them in that moment. R.A.B. The name haunted them. They did not know who Regulus Arcturus Black was. They had heard the name from Sirius, but only in passing. A Death Eater, a coward who got in over his head, the brother who chose wrong. The story Sirius believed until his dying breath. They had no reason to disbelieve him. Regulus was a Death Eater. He had the mark on his arm. They tried to question Kreacher, the house elf, who had served the Black family for decades. The house elf who had seen the note, knew the story, had been there at the lake. But Kreacher's loyalty to the locket was absolute. His hatred for anyone who was not his dear master Regulus made him a useless source. He was a bitter, angry elf, bound to a house he saw defiled by blood traitors. He refused to say a single useful word. He betrayed them to Narcissa, trying to get back to the locket. He was a relentless, frustrating obstacle. The fake locket itself became a curse upon the trio. It fed on Ron's deepest insecurities, on his fear that he was not good enough, not loved enough, that Hermione loved Harry more. It whispered paranoia and jealousy. It turned a kind boy into a tyrant. Every moment they carried it, it drained their hope. And all the while, they did not know the name of the boy who had pulled the first thread in the tapestry of Voldemort's defeat. It was not until they were trapped in Grimmauld Place, forced to hide and fight for their very survival, that the truth cracked wide open. Harry remembered the strange power of possession. He remembered how the diary had possessed Ginny, how the locket had tormented Ron. He understood something crucial. He forced Kreacher to bring the locket. Kreacher brought it, but it was not the real locket. It was a replica, a fake, a symbol of failure Kreacher had kept out of shame. And when Harry gave it to Kreacher, ordering him to destroy it if he wanted to be of any use, Kreacher broke. He sobbed. He told the story of Regulus Black. He told them about the cave, the Inferi, the poison. He told them how Voldemort used him like a tool. He told them how his master, the best master a house elf could have, walked into that dark water and never came back. He told them how Regulus Arcturus Black had realized the truth about the Dark Lord and chose to die to undo what he had helped create. R.A.E. was Regulus Arcturus Black. The brother Sirius never fully understood. Sirius saw the Death Eater, the coward who ran home. But Regulus was something else entirely. He joined the Death Eaters, looking for belonging. He joined to prove he was the perfect Black. He joined because his parents wanted it. But when he saw Voldemort's cruelty firsthand, When he saw his house elf discarded like trash, he opened his eyes. He saw the truth of what the Dark Lord stood for. He saw what his family's obsession with blood and power actually created, and he chose to walk into the dark to undo it. He did not run away like his brother. He did not fight in the open. He lied, he stole, and he died in total silence. He made a house elf promise to keep a secret, even from his own family. Regulus's sacrifice made Voldemort's eventual defeat possible. He broke the chain of Horcruxes. He removed the Locket from its original hiding place. Without that initial act of defiance, Harry would have found only a dead end. The Locket would still be lying in the basin, the island unapproachable, the Inferi forever bound to protect a treasure that could never be reached. Regulus brought it into the light. He allowed it to be found, to be fought over, to be destroyed by a boy named Ron Weasley with the sword of Gryffindor. He created a crack in the Dark Lord's immortality so wide that Harry Potter could walk through it with the Elder Wand in his hand. Kreacher, once a source of misery, became an unexpected ally. Harry showed him kindness. Harry gave him the fake locket, treating it like a true gift. Harry told him to make sure Regulus's sacrifice was honoured, and Kreacher changed. He led the House Elves of Hogwarts into the Battle of Hogwarts, his own small army of creatures who owed a debt to the wizarding world, fighting for the boy who gave him a locket and a purpose. Regulus's command to Kreacher did not just survive. It rippled through time and helped win the war. In the end, the House of Black gave the world 2 rebels. One burned himself from the Tapestry in a blaze of defiance. The other quietly picked the lock on the darkest magic ever known and sacrificed himself in the cold, dark water. The male line of the Black family ended not with hatred, but with sacrifice. The locket that waited for so many years finally, after decades, fulfilled its master's command. It was destroyed. The Black family tapestry is filled with names of those who chose power over love, blood over family. But in the shadow of that tapestry, 2 branches chose differently. Sirius burned his name away. Regulus quietly removed himself from the story altogether. They left behind an ancient house, a dying lineage, and a secret that changed everything. The weight of their choices, the love and hate of the House of Black, did not vanish when Voldemort fell. It rippled out, touching the Malfoys, the Tonkses, the Weasleys, and a boy named Harry Potter who inherited not just a house, but a legacy of defiance, madness, and a quiet, enduring hope. Regulus Arcturus Black was not a hero in the conventional sense. He was a boy who learned very late what he truly believed in, and who paid the highest price to prove it. His story is not one of redemption found in the midst of war, but of truth discovered in the shadow of terrible evil. And that truth, held in the hands of a house elf for a decade, helped save the entire wizarding world. The story of Regulus Black and the Locket forms a quiet rebellion, but the most visible division within the House of Black was born from a single branch of the family tree, Cygnus Black and Drella Rosier. They were the parents of Bellatrix, of Andromeda, and of Narcissa, and in their 3 daughters, entire conflict of the Black family, its future, its fractures, and its fate, was perfectly embodied. Cygnus Black was the brother of Walburga. He was as committed to the doctrine of pure blood as she was. But where Walburga expressed her rage through screaming portraits and the burning of tapestry names, Cygnus was a study in cold, aristocratic expectation. He was the head of a branch of the family that demanded perfection. He matched his authority with an equally ambitious partner, Drella Rosier, a woman from a deeply dark lineage, herself a model of pure blood womanhood. Together, they raised 3 daughters with one clear purpose. Each daughter was expected to marry strategically, to form alliances that would preserve the Black family's prestige. They were groomed not for happiness, but for duty. The family motto, Toujours Pur, was not just a slogan in that household, it was a command. Bellatrix, the eldest, took the command to heart. She was brilliant and fierce, the perfect daughter. She married Rodolphus Lestrange, cementing an alliance with a powerful dark family. Her loyalty was absolute, given entirely to the ideology of blood purity and to the Dark Lord who embodied it. Andromeda, the middle sister, lived under the same roof, heard the same lectures, and stood beneath the same family tree. But she saw the emptiness beneath the gold thread. She fell in love with a muggle-born wizard named Tonks. When she chose him, Cygnus and Druella exercised the family's ultimate punishment. They burned her from the tree. Her loyalty was to love. Narcissa, the youngest, was the most pragmatic. She married Lucius Malfoy. She embraced the power and security of the pure blood world. But her deepest loyalty was not to the Dark Lord or to the abstract ideal of blood. It was to her son, Draco. Her love was personal, possessive, and would eventually prove more powerful than her fear. The three sisters never stood together again. They represent the three forms of loyalty that the Black family could produce: the fanatical loyalty that destroys, the rebellious loyalty that heals, and the protective loyalty that endures. Their parents, Cygnus and Druella, built a gilded cage of expectation. Bellatrix mastered the cage and became its jailer. Andromeda broke the cage and walked free. Narcissa learned to live inside the cage, quietly turning the lock to protect what was hers. These decisions did not stay confined to the family. They rippled outward and shaped the wars that followed. Bellatrix brought the full force of her fanaticism to the battlefield. Narcissa's devotion to her son gave her the courage to lie to the Dark Lord himself. And Andromeda's daughter, Nymphadora Tonks, would grow up to prove that love is the strongest magic of all. The legacy of Cygnus and Druella was not unity. It was a permanent, defining split. That split became even more painful because it was never merely political. It was intimate. Bellatrix and Narcissa remained tied by blood, by memory, and by the expectations of their childhood. Yet Andromeda became a name that could not be spoken in their parents' house without anger. The sister, who had once shared their nursery, was treated as though she had never existed. That was the cruelty at the heart of the Black family's obsession with purity. It did not simply exclude strangers. It taught parents to reject children, sisters to lose sisters, and love to become a betrayal. Andromeda's choice created a new family line outside the old rules. With Tonks, she built a life defined by the very thing the Blacks feared: connection across the boundaries they had spent generations defending. Their daughter, Tonks, inherited none of the family's cold reverence for blood status. She became an Auror, fought for the Order of the Phoenix, and gave her life resisting the world Bellatrix helped create. The tragedy is that Bellatrix and Tonks were not distant symbols of opposing sides. They were cousins. Their final conflict carried the weight of everything that had divided the family for decades. Bellatrix represented the Black legacy at its most merciless, transformed from inheritance into fanaticism. Tonks represented the possibility that the legacy could be refused, reshaped, and made kinder. When both died in the Battle of Hogwarts, the old family feud had reached its most devastating conclusion. Narcissa survived because she chose her son over the cause. Andromeda survived, but lost her husband, her daughter, and her son-in-law to the war. Bellatrix died still devoted to a master who valued no devotion except his own. In the end, each sister paid a price for the loyalty she chose. The House of Black had promised its children status, protection, and permanence. Instead, it gave them fear, division, and loss. Yet the family's story did not end with the destruction of its old certainties. Through Teddy Lupin, the son of Tonks and Remus Lupin, the Black bloodline continued in a child connected to Muggles, werewolves, and the very people the family had once condemned. That future was not pure. It was mixed, complicated, and human, and that was precisely why it mattered. Of the three sisters born to Cygnus and Druella Black, the eldest was always the most intense. Bellatrix arrived first, and from her earliest years she seemed to burn with a fire that her younger sisters could not match. Where Narcissa was composed and Andromeda was curious, Bellatrix was fierce. She was brilliant in her studies, mastering spells that would have challenged older witches. And she carried herself with the absolute certainty that she was destined for greatness. The Black family had always valued ambition, But in Bellatrix, that ambition was not merely a trait, it was a force. She was sorted into Slytherin, as almost every black had been before her, and there she found her natural home. But even among Slytherins, Bellatrix stood apart. She was drawn to the darker corners of magic, to the spells that others whispered about but rarely attempted. She learned quickly that power was not given, it was taken, and she had no patience for those who pretended otherwise. When the Dark Lord first began to gather followers, Bellatrix was among the first to answer his call. She was young, still in her late teens or early 20s, but she recognized something in Voldemort that resonated with the deepest parts of her soul. Here was a wizard who understood that blood purity was not merely a tradition, it was the foundation of everything. Here was a wizard who would not apologize for his beliefs, who would not compromise, who would burn the old world down and build a better one from the ashes. Bellatrix gave herself to that vision completely. She did not hesitate. She did not question. She simply believed. Her marriage to Rodolphus Lestrange was not a love match in the ordinary sense. It was a union of two ancient and powerful pure-blood families, a strengthening of lines that had been intertwined for centuries. The Lestranges were as devoted to the Dark Lord as Bellatrix was, and together the three of them, Rodolphus, his brother Rabastan, and Bellatrix, became a core of Voldemort's inner circle. They were trusted with the darkest missions, the most dangerous secrets. They were the ones who could be counted on to do what needed to be done without flinching, and Bellatrix did not flinch. She embraced her role as a Death Eater with a fervour that bordered on religious ecstasy. For her, terror and torture and chaos were not unfortunate necessities, they were delights. She revelled in the screams of her victims. She laughed as she cast the Cruciatus curse, drawing out the pain because she found it beautiful. She was not merely cruel, she was creative in her cruelty, always looking for new ways to break her targets, new ways to prove her loyalty to the Dark Lord. In this, Bellatrix took the Black family creed and twisted it into its most monstrous form. The Blacks had always believed in purity, in the superiority of their bloodline, in the necessity of keeping their line untainted. But where other Blacks had drawn lines, exiling squibs, disowning those who married Muggle-borns, Bellatrix erased those lines entirely. For her, there was no such thing as too far. There was no act too dark, no sacrifice too great if it served the Dark Lord's cause. She became the living embodiment of everything the Black family had ever whispered about in their grand drawing rooms, but she shouted it from the rooftops, and she made sure the world heard. Her devotion was absolute. When Voldemort fell, when he vanished after attacking the infant Harry Potter, Bellatrix did not abandon him. She did not claim she had been under the Imperious curse, as so many other Death Eaters did. She did not try to rebuild her life, or pretend that her loyalty had been a mistake. She raged. She fought. And when the Aurors finally captured her, she was still laughing, still defiant, still utterly convinced that her Dark Lord would return. She was sentenced to Azkaban for life, and the Dementors fed on her happiness, her hope, her memories. But they could not touch her faith. In the darkness of that prison, surrounded by despair, Bellatrix held on to one thing, the certainty that Voldemort was not gone forever. She waited, she endured, and when, 14 years later, he finally returned, she was ready to serve him again, more devoted than ever. The woman who emerged from Azkaban was not the same Bellatrix who had entered. The years of Dementor exposure had stripped away whatever humanity she had once possessed. She was thinner, wilder, her eyes carrying a madness that had always been there but was now fully unleashed. She was a weapon, and she was eager to be wielded. Her joy in violence only grew. She tortured the Longbottoms into permanent insanity, seeking information that might lead to the Dark Lord. She participated in the battle at the Department of Mysteries, where she faced her cousin Sirius and killed him with a single curse, laughing as he fell through the veil. She was present at the Malfoy Manor, where she tortured Hermione Granger for information, carving the word mudblood into her arm with a knife. treating the act as if it were a game, and in the end, at the Battle of Hogwarts, she faced Molly Weasley. The duel was brief but fierce. Bellatrix was confident, arrogant, certain that no ordinary witch could match her. But Molly Weasley was not fighting for power or purity or the approval of a Dark Lord. She was fighting for her children, for her family, for the simple and profound love that Bellatrix had never understood. And when Molly's curse struck Bellatrix in the chest, the most devoted of Voldemort's followers fell, still laughing, still defiant, still believing until the very last moment that she was right. Bellatrix Black Lestrange left behind a legacy of terror, but she also left behind something else, a daughter. In the final months before the Battle of Hogwarts, Bellatrix had given birth to a child, fathered by Lord Voldemort himself. That child, Delphine, would grow up in the shadows of her parents' crimes, searching for a family that had never truly existed. But that is a story for another time. For now, it is enough to say that the Black family's most fanatical daughter burned brightly, burned terribly, and left ashes that would take years to cool. Bellatrix Black Lestrange had sealed her fate in darkness, a devoted soldier to Lord Voldemort. She was eldest daughter of Cygnus and Druella, the perfect pure-blood weapon. But the family had 3 daughters, and they could not have been more different from one another. The middle sister was Andromeda, and if Bellatrix represented the fury of the Black family, Andromeda represented the quiet rebellion that the family could never quite stamp out. She grew up in the same gilded cage as her sisters, in the same house on Grimmauld Place, surrounded by the same tapestries and the same lectures on blood purity. She was sorted into Slytherin, as tradition demanded. She had the dark hair, the sharp features, the aristocratic bearing. On the surface, she was exactly what the Black family expected, but she did not share their core belief. She did not believe that blood made one person better than another. She looked at the family tree, at all the names burned off for marrying muggles or squibs, and she saw cruelty, not purity. At Hogwarts, she met a muggle-born wizard named Ted Tonks. Ted was clever, warm, and entirely outside the world of the Sacred 28. He was the exact kind of person the Black family had built their entire identity to exclude and despise, and Andromeda fell in love with him. This was not a casual defiance. It was a total rejection of everything her name stood for. She chose Ted over her heritage. She chose love over blood purity, and so she married him. The Black family's response was immediate and absolute. Her father, Cygnus, refused to speak her name. More brutally, he took out his wand and performed a ritual erasure on the Black family tapestry. The tapestry was a masterpiece of dark familial magic, woven with gold thread at 12 Grimmauld Place, charting every Black ancestor for centuries. When Andromeda married Ted, the threads holding her image in place literally burned away. Her face blackened, curled, and fell into ash. A charred hole remained in the fabric where she had once stood. She was no longer a Black. She was a warning to everyone else who might consider defying the family. The severing of ties was total. She lost her parents, she lost her inheritance, and she lost her sisters forever. Bellatrix viewed Andromeda's marriage as the ultimate betrayal. To Bellatrix, blood was the only divinity. Andromeda had diluted it, corrupted it. Bellatrix hated her with the cold fury of a true believer, and that hatred never faded. Narcissa, the youngest, was different. She loved Andromeda, but she was too afraid to defy the family structure, too committed to the safety of tradition. The rift between the 3 sisters became a chasm. Bellatrix served the Dark Lord. Narcissa married Lucius Malfoy, and Andromeda vanished from their world entirely. Exile from the Black family was the price Andromeda paid for choosing her own life. But that exile was also a gift. She built a family of her own, a family entirely free of blood prejudice. She and Ted had a daughter, Nymphadora Tonks, who grew up in a warm, modest home. Nymphadora was a metamorph magus, able to change her appearance at will. She became an Auror, brave and clumsy, and full of light, entirely unlike the cold severity of the Black family. When Nymphadora fell in love with Remus Lupin, a werewolf, Andromeda did not hesitate. She welcomed Remus into her home with open arms. She gave them refuge when the Order needed safe houses. The family she built was the exact opposite of the one she came from. It was a kinder family, built on acceptance, not blood. But the Second Wizarding War took almost everything from her. Her husband, Ted Tonks, was captured and murdered by Snatchers while trying to protect his fellow Muggle-borns. Her daughter, Nymphadora, died in the Battle of Hogwarts. Her son-in-law, Remus Lupin, died alongside her. Andromeda was left alone in the house that had once been so full. She became the sole guardian of her grandson, Edward Remus Lupin, a child everyone called Teddy. She lost everyone she loved, yet she did not harden. She raised Teddy in that same warm house. She gave him the childhood the Black family would never have allowed. Her exile had cost her everything, but it had also given her the only thing that mattered. A family built on choice, not obligation. Bellatrix was consumed by fanaticism. Andromeda was defined by sacrifice. The youngest sister remained caught between them, bound by the family name and married into the heart of the Death Eater inner circle. She was a mother above all else, and the war was about to force a choice upon her that no pure blood doctrine could ever prepare her for. She was the youngest of the three sisters. Andromeda had chosen love and been burned from the family tree. Bellatrix had chosen devotion and been consumed by it. Narcissa watched both paths from a careful distance. She was not drawn to the raw violence of her eldest sister, nor the reckless passion of the middle one. Narcissa was drawn to something quieter: control, status, the preservation of her own world. And so she married Lucius Malfoy. It was not a rebellion. It was not a crusade. It was a marriage of two ancient houses, a union that made perfect sense to the Black family. The Malfoys were wealthy, influential, and deeply concerned with the same image of purity that defined Narcissa's upbringing. Lucius was handsome, ambitious, and knew exactly how to navigate the corridors of power at the ministry and in society. Together, they were a fortress. Narcissa became mistress of Malfoy Manor, a vast estate draped in opulence and shadow, a home that spoke of centuries of magic and authority. For a time, this was enough. She had the safety of high walls, the comfort of wealth, and a husband who understood the game. But then came Draco, and everything changed. Motherhood reshaped Narcissa in a way that marriage never could. She had always wanted stability, but now she had something to protect. Draco was not just a son. He was the future of the Malfoy line, the embodiment of everything she and Lucius had built. Every decision she made from that point forward was filtered through a single question: is this safe for my son? Is this good for my son? Her loyalty was never ideological in the way Bellatrix's was. She did not care about the Dark Lord's vision for the wizarding world. She did not care about blood purity as an abstract principle. She cared about Draco. She cared about the Malfoy name as a shield for her family. And so when Voldemort returned, when the mark on Lucius's arm burned him back into service, Narcissa found herself trapped. The Malfoys had welcomed power. They had courted influence, but they had not anticipated what it meant to be owned. The manor became a headquarters, the elegant halls filled with Death Eaters and the smell of fear. Lucius lost the Dark Lord's diary, failed his mission, and fell from favour. The family that had once stood so proud found itself kneeling. And worst of all for Narcissa, her son was no longer a child to be protected. He became a tool. When Voldemort gave Draco the task of killing Albus Dumbledore, it was not a promotion. It was a punishment. It was a test designed to destroy a family that had disappointed him. Narcissa watched her son crumble under the weight of an impossible mission. She saw the fear in his eyes, the sleepless nights, the hollow desperation, and something inside her broke free. She did not go to the Dark Lord to plead. She went to Severus Snape. She cornered him in the drawing room of the manor and demanded an unbreakable vow. She's asked him to protect Draco, to complete the task if Draco failed, to shield her son from the consequences of Voldemort's cruelty. This was not an act of rebellion. It was an act of motherhood. She did not care about the war. She did not care about the cause. She cared about one thing only, and she would bind a man's soul to hers to secure it. Then came the final moment, the Battle of Hogwarts, the forest. Harry Potter had fallen. Voldemort ordered Narcissa to check his body, and there, in the darkness, with the fate of the world hanging in the balance, she knelt beside the boy who had been her son's enemy. She felt his heart beating. She had power in that moment. She could have exposed him. She could have fulfilled her duty to the Dark Lord. But she did not ask about the war. She did not ask about Voldemort. She leaned close and whispered, asking the only question that mattered. Is Draco alive? Is he in the castle? Harry whispered back, yes. And Narcissa Black Malfoy, a woman who had spent her entire life playing the game of status and safety, chose her son over everything. She lied. She looked into the face of the most dangerous wizard in the world and told him that Harry Potter was dead, because that was the price of getting back to her son. That was the only thing that had ever truly mattered to her. Her greatest choice was not for the black name. It was not for Voldemort. It was for Draco. It was a quiet choice, made in a dark forest, with no witnesses to her loyalty but the boy who was supposed to be dead. It proved that even in a family defined by extremes, the quietest loyalty can change everything. The Malfoys survived the war. They retreated from the public eye. They rebuilt their world around the one thing Narcissa had fought to protect, and Draco lived. The Black family tree is full of scorch marks, burned scars where names were removed for marrying the wrong person, or being born without magic, or defying the family creed. But Narcissa never burned. She bent, she endured, she waited, and in the end she chose her son. It was the most human choice a member of that family ever made, and it saved them all. The story of the Black family does not end with Narcissa, but it does find a kind of resolution. The threads of madness and rebellion and love and loyalty weave through every branch of the tree, pulling forward into the next generation, carrying the weight of a name that was never quite as pure as it claimed to be. Narcissa Black Malfoy built her life around walls. Status was a wall. Family reputation was a wall. Safety behind stone and pure blood tradition. Her cousin Sirius Black took the opposite approach entirely. He destroyed every wall he encountered, starting with the ones his family had spent centuries constructing around him. When the First Wizarding War erupted against the rise of Lord Voldemort, Sirius Black did not hesitate. He was still young, barely out of Hogwarts, but his allegiance was absolute. He joined the Order of the Phoenix, not out of abstract duty, but out of a deeply personal love for the people fighting on the other side. James Potter was his brother in all but blood. Lily Potter had welcomed him into a home he never knew he deserved. And when James and Lily were marked for death, Sirius's devotion crystallized into something fierce. He was named Harry Potter's godfather. It was a role he took with the full gravity of his broken upbringing. He would have laid down his life for that child without a second thought. The plan to hide them was his suggestion, a Fidelius charm, a secret keeper. He volunteered himself. Then at the very last moment, he changed the plan. He believed he was outsmarting the enemy. He persuaded James and Lily to make Peter Pettigrew the secret keeper instead. It was a trap he didn't see coming. Peter Pettigrew was the traitor, not Sirius. Sirius had given up his role as secret keeper because he thought it would make the Potters safer. He wanted to be the decoy, the obvious target, while the real secret hid in plain sight. But Wormtail had already sold them out for his own skin. When Sirius arrived at Godric's Hollow, he saw the roof torn off the house. His best friend was dead. Lily was dead. Harry had survived but was already gone. Sirius's grief did not break him. It turned him into something relentless. He took his flying motorcycle and hunted Peter down through the night. He cornered him in a street full of muggles, and Peter, coward to the core, screamed out that Sirius had betrayed James and Lily. He framed him completely and perfectly. Cursing the air, he blasted the street apart, killed 12 muggles with a single curse, cut off his own finger, and transformed into a rat to escape down into the sewers. Sirius Black was left standing in the wreckage of his life, laughing in the rain, with nothing but the weight of a crime he didn't commit. He did not get a trial. He did not get a chance to speak. The Ministry of Magic threw him into Azkaban without a hearing. And here, the rebel heir of the noble and most ancient House of Black became one of the wizarding world's most hated prisoners. The family name, already a stain on his back, was now synonymous with murder and treachery. The Black family tapestry in the drawing room at Grimmauld Place showed his parents burning his name off in shame, but the wizarding world burned something far deeper. Azkaban is a fortress built entirely on despair. Dementors feed on happy memories. Sirius Black had very few happy memories left to hold on to, but he had one anchor. He knew he was innocent, and he knew the truth. He knew Peter Pettigrew was still breathing somewhere out in the world. That single thread of grim certainty was enough to keep him human. He held onto his sanity by transforming into his animagus form, a dog. Emotions are simpler for a dog, less structured for the Dementors to grasp and tear apart. So he waited. For 12 years, he sat in that cell, knowing that somewhere out there, a rat was walking free while the world forgot Sirius Black. And while Sirius Black wasted away in a cold cell on an island in the North Sea, another Black remained in the house he had fled. The house at number 12, Grimmauld Place, held its secrets closely. One of them was a house elf named Kreacher, who had served the family loyally across decades of silence, and who had recently followed a different Black son down into a cave beside a dark lake with a heavy golden locket swinging around his neck. The story of the Black family is a cycle of imprisonment. Sirius Black was born into a gilded cage at number 12 Grimmauld Place, a house that curated hatred like a prized collection. He escaped it as a teenager, finding his true family in the Potters. He fought in the Order of the Phoenix during the First Wizarding War, risking his life alongside Lily and James. He was a soldier, a brother in arms, and a godfather. He loved them. And then in a single moment, it was all destroyed. James and Lily were dead. Peter Pettigrew had framed him. Sirius was arrested in the street, laughing, not because he was mad, but because his entire world had just collapsed. He was sentenced to Azkaban without a trial, the Dementors dragging him into a darkness he would not leave for 12 years. He spent 12 years in that fortress, surrounded by Dementors, sustained only by the knowledge of his own innocence and a burning need for revenge against the traitor who had betrayed his best friend. But Sirius Black possessed a secret that the Ministry had forgotten. He was an unregistered animagus. He could transform into a great black dog. Dogs do not experience emotions the same way humans do. The Dementors, who feed on human happiness and despair, had far less effect on him in his canine form. It was a small crack in the prison's defense, but it was enough. The Ministry guards had no idea what he was capable of. To them, he was just another broken prisoner. They never thought to check if a dog was walking out of the front door. And so when he saw Pettigrew's name on the front page of the Daily Prophet, framed as a hero, the rage that had kept him alive for a decade crystallized into a single clear purpose. He had to get out. The Dementors could not drain what he did not feel in that form. He simply grew thin and slipped between the bars. The wizarding world believed he was a mass murderer, a follower of Voldemort who had betrayed the Potters. They thought he had come to finish the job, to kill Harry Potter, but the truth was the exact opposite. Sirius's escape was not an act of a villain seeking to kill, but a desperate godfather seeking to protect. He had not betrayed James and Lily. He had been the secret keeper, switching places with Peter at the last moment to use his cunning as a decoy. It was Pettigrew who had sold them out. Sirius was not hunting Harry to harm him. He was hunting Harry to save him from the traitor, who was living as his pet rat. This changes everything about how we understand Sirius Black. He was never a broken killer roaming the countryside for sport. He was a broken man, barely holding himself together, moving across the country in the skin of a dog, driven by guilt and love, determined to find the boy who reminded him of the best days of his life. He was not an escaped convict. He was a guardian angel in wolf's clothing. His plan, however, could not last. He had to clear his name, but mostly, he had to stay close to Harry. With nowhere else to go, no resources, no friends he fully trusted after the betrayal, the only shelter he could find was the one place he had sworn never to return to. Number 12 Grimmauld Place, the house of his childhood, the home he had escaped as a teenager, leaving behind a screaming mother and a wall of severed elf heads. Now as an adult, a fugitive, an escaped convict, he walked back through that same front door. The house was just as suffocating as he remembered. The curtains were drawn. The dark magic lingered in the wallpaper. The portrait of his mother still shrieked curses at him every time he passed. The Order used his home as headquarters, which gave him purpose, but it also trapped him in the role of a house arrest fugitive. He could not fight alongside them. He could only send them out, pacing in the halls, the dog again, waiting for news. The house was a mausoleum for the life he could have had. He was a 30-something man living in his old bedroom, dreaming of a godson he could not touch. He could not leave. The Ministry was looking for him. The Dementors were looking for him. He was a prisoner in Azkaban, and now he was a prisoner at home. And here is the cruel twist of fate that defines the tragedy of Sirius Black. He survived Azkaban. He broke out of the most secure prison in the wizarding world. He achieved the impossible. But the freedom he gained was an illusion. He spent the rest of his life confined to the very house he had tried to escape. The dog he became was a perfect metaphor for his existence. He was loyal, fierce, protective, where he was always chained. In Azkaban, the bars were made of despair. At Grimmauld Place, the bars were made of memory. He traded one prison for another. The house itself became his final captor. Every time he looked at the family tree on the wall, he saw his own face burned off. Every creak of the floorboards was a reminder that he could not leave. He could not go to Diagon Alley. He could not buy new robes. He could not even trust his own reflection. He was alive, yes. He was free of the Dementors, but he was trapped in the past, surrounded by the ghosts of a family who had hated him, doing the only thing he could do to stay sane. Waiting for the moment he could finally prove his innocence and be the godfather Harry deserved. And so, Sirius Black found himself back where it all began. The dog who had escaped his cage had returned to it, but the cage was no longer just the house. It was the legacy of the Black family itself. The walls of Grimmauld Place were thick with secrets. There were locked rooms, creaking cabinets, and an old house elf whose loyalties were deeply divided. The house was not just a home. It was a vault filled with the dark history of the Black family, a history that Sirius, in his confinement, was forced to confront every single day. From his hiding place in the shadows, he watched the world move on without him, unaware that the greatest dangers of the Second War were already stirring. Hidden, not in the dark forest or the Ministry, but in the very heart of the home he had inherited, Sirius Black had achieved the impossible. He had escaped the fortress of Azkaban, the only prisoner ever to do so. But freedom is a fragile thing when the entire world believes you are a traitor. He could not walk in the sunlight. He could not clear his name without putting Harry at risk. So he hid, first in the wilds of the world, and then within the walls of his own family's prison. Number 12 Grimmauld Place. He spent his final years confined to the house he had despised as a child, surrounded by the rotting ghosts of a family that had rejected him. The only moments of warmth were his glimpses of Harry, a godfather's love desperate to do something, anything, for the son of his best friend. And then the call came. Harry, impulsive and brave, had been tricked into believing Sirius was in danger at the Department of Mysteries inside the Ministry of Magic. Sirius did not hesitate. He rallied the remnants of the Order of the Phoenix and went to fight. The battle echoed through a vast, shadowy chamber called the Death Chamber. At its centre stood an ancient stone archway, a veil tattered and whispering. It was a boundary between the world of the living and the world beyond. In the chaos, Harry was dueling Bellatrix Lestrange. Sirius, focused on taunting his cousin, let his guard down for just a moment. Bellatrix seized it. A flash of red light, a jet from her wand, struck him squarely in the chest. He did not scream. He simply fell backward, through the stone archway, through the mysterious veil, and was gone. He did not fall to the ground. The veil billowed once, and then was still. The last male heir of the noble and most ancient house of Black had been murdered by his own cousin. For Harry, and for the wizarding world, that moment was a door slamming shut on hope. Bellatrix had killed her cousin in the service of her master. She was proud, triumphant, but Voldemort's return was only the beginning of the war. Meanwhile, another member of the Black family was watching her world collapse, not from a desire for power, but from a desperate need to protect her son. Narcissa Malfoy had seen her husband imprisoned, her home used as a base for the Dark Lord, and her son pressed into a mission to kill Albus Dumbledore, a task that was meant to fail. By the time the Battle of Hogwarts raged around the ancient castle, everything Narcissa valued had been stripped away. She cared nothing for the Dark Lord's ideology. She cared nothing for the pure-blood doctrine her family was built upon. She cared only for Draco. And so, when Voldemort cast the killing curse on Harry Potter in the Forbidden Forest, the fate of the entire war rested on the hands of a woman who had always seemed so cold. Voldemort ordered her to check the boy's body. She knelt beside Harry, her hand on his chest. She felt a heartbeat. It was faint, but it was there. She leaned in close, her voice barely a whisper. "Is Draco alive?" The boy gave the faintest nod. In that instant, everything changed. Her son was safe, and for that, she would betray the Dark Lord she had followed for years. She stood up, her face a mask of cold certainty, and declared the words that would seal Voldemort's fate. "He is dead." The lie was the turning point. Voldemort believed his victory was secure, and marched to the Great Hall of Hogwarts to claim his prize. But Bellatrix Lestrange still fought on, wild, laughing, dueling on the castle grounds. She was a creature of pure destruction, the most faithful of the Death Eaters, but she was not invincible. She faced Molly Weasley, a mother protecting her children. The duel was brutal and swift. Bellatrix underestimated the fury of a mother's love. "You will not touch our children," Molly Weasley screamed, and a final curse struck Bellatrix in the chest. The most devoted of Voldemort's followers fell dead on the stones of the Great Hall. She had burned her own family from the tree long ago, and now she herself was nothing but ash, her fanaticism silenced forever. And what of the sister she had burned from the tree? Andromeda Tonks had chosen love. She had married Ted Tonks, a Muggle-born, and raised a daughter, Nymphadora. But survival is not the same as living. Andromeda's husband, Ted, was murdered by Snatchers during the war. Her daughter Tonks and her son-in-law, Remus Lupin, were killed in the final battle of Hogwarts, leaving behind their infant son, Teddy. Andromeda became the sole guardian of her grandson. She survived the destruction of the Black family, but she lost nearly everyone she loved. The noble and most ancient house of Black was no more. The name survived only in history books and on a damaged tapestry with many branches burnt away. The three sisters, born of the same sacred blood, took three different paths. Bellatrix chose hatred and was destroyed by love. Narcissa chose family and found her redemption in a lie. And Andromeda chose love and endured the cruelest cost of the war. In the end, the lesson of the House of Black was clear. Blood purity meant nothing. The only thing that mattered was what they chose to do with their final moments, their last choices. After Sirius fell beyond the ancient veil, and after Narcissa spoke her light of Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest, the House of Black as a political and social entity was effectively finished. The war was ending, and the family that had traded in secrets, dark magic, and absolute loyalty to pure blood was left in ruins. Sirius and Regulus Black were the last two male heirs of the direct Black line. Neither produced an heir of their own. Regulus died young in a cave by the sea, consumed by Inferi. Sirius died in the Department of Mysteries, his body tumbling through a dusty veil. With those two deaths, the Black surname as a direct inheritance from father to son simply ceased to exist. There was no son to inherit the name, No child to carry the weight of the family tapestry into a new generation. The noble and most ancient house of Black, in its strictest sense, had no future at all. But blood itself is a stubborn and persistent thread. The family had married into so many other lines, woven itself so deeply into the fabric of wizarding society, that its genetic legacy was guaranteed, even if its name was not. The true continuation of the Black line lay not in its male heirs, but in the daughters the family had so often dismissed as less important. Narcissa Malfoy, the youngest of the three sisters, gave birth to Draco Malfoy. Draco survived the war, married and had a son of his own named Scorpius. The black blood flows quiet and constant through the Malfoy dynasty. Andromeda Tonks, the sister burnt from the family tree for marrying the Muggle-born Ted Tonks, saw her bloodline continue through her daughter Nymphadora. Nymphadora married Remus Lupin, and their son, Edward Remus Lupin, known as Teddy, carries the black heritage into a generation that will never know the weight of the family name. He is a metamorph magus, a rare magical trait inherited from his grandmother Andromeda, a power the old Blacks would have prized as a mark of their superiority. But Teddy will never be asked to live up to their legacy. To understand what the family truly became, we must return to the burned tapestry in the drawing room of number 12, Grimmauld Place. This tapestry was the family's greatest monument to itself, a sprawling golden web of every Black who ever lived, but it was also a weapon. The family used it to enforce obedience. They burned away Marius simply for being born a squib. They burned away Iola for marrying a Muggle. They burned away Andromeda for choosing love. They burned a hole where Sirius stood, as if removing his thread could remove his existence from their history. The tapestry remained there, riddled with scorch marks, a silent monument to their cruelty. The family believed they could erase the impact of their rebels simply by removing their threads. They were wrong. The rebels are the only reason the wizarding world remembers the Black family at all. The ones they burned away are the ones whose stories truly matter. The tapestry is not a record of their pride. It is a record of their failure. This is the final lesson of the House of Black. Blood was the bond they worshipped above all else. It made them related. It gave them a shared roof, a shared vault, a shared set of prejudices. But it was never able to command their true loyalty. Choice determined who they became. Sirius chose friendship and justice over family tradition. Regulus chose remorse and sacrifice over blind service. Narcissa chose the life of her son over the victory of the Dark Lord. Andromeda chose love over the safety of her station. The family tried to make them slaves to their lineage, but they broke free and defined themselves. The name Toujours Pur, always pure, is now a relic. The house at Grimmauld Place sits empty and damp. The Black family did not fall to an enemy from the outside. It collapsed under the impossible weight of its own demands. It demanded purity and received only rebellion. It demanded absolute loyalty and received only sustained defiance. But from those rebellions came the choices that helped save the wizarding world. The blood of the Blacks made them members of a family. But in the end, their choices made them who they truly were, and that is the only legacy that survived beyond the flames.